everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Marvel and DC Retrospective Podcast. I am your host, Kay Chamberlain, and this is another episode of Flash Forward, which is the show on the podcast where I talk about every single issue of The Flash, starting from Volume 2, which is where Wally's Flash begins. And today, we're going to be talking about issues 10 through 20. Because issue 21 is a tie-in to Invasion, so we'll finish at 20, and then we'll be able to cover the Invasion event, which is something that we'll get into another time. We're not going to talk about that, because we're here to talk about The Flash. I was gonna say something, and now I think I've blanked about it. Alright, yeah. If you watched the last episode of Flash Forward, you would know that we covered up to issue 7. And you're probably wondering where issue 8 and 9 are. They are a part of the Millennium event, so if you want to know what happens in issues 8 and 9, you've got to go and find those episodes of Millennium. I think it was episode 1 of the first part of the Millennium event that I did. And then the 4th episode of Millennium I did have the 2 Flash tie-ins in them. So I think those are the episodes that you're looking for if you only care about the Flash. So anyway, let's get into it and start talking about Flash issue 10. It's written by Mike Barron, with art by Mike Collins, who is a guest penciler today. He's a guest artist. Usually it's Jackson Geist, but he must have been off this month. So previously, in The Flash, Wally was dealing with a character called the Chunk, or Chester Runk. He's this, obese, this young obese guy who was bullied all of his life, and he is a prodigal child in terms of how smart he is. He created his own anti-transmitter device, and transmatter device, but accidentally absorbed it, and now he has the ability to absorb people, and if he doesn't absorb things, he will implode. So Wally goes to try and stop him, and evidently he ends up getting absorbed by Chunk, and Chunk takes Wally to the apocalyptic world that is inside him. So there's this massive wasteland, and now Wally is trapped there alongside the people that Chunk has absorbed throughout the years. So we start off with Chunk welcoming Wally. He's like, "Welcome to my world. Now it's your world too. Stay away from my things. I'm going for a walk." So he heads off. And Wally's just like, "Wait!" And a couple of the characters that have been absorbed by Chunk are his therapist, Jarrett Parker, a woman named Karen Prius, who turned him down for a date, and this guy called Eric, who says, all I did was cut him off in an intersection. So Wally pieces together that all of the people stuck inside Chunk have wronged him in some way, or, have upset him somehow. And Wally's just kind of "My God, how long have you been here?" And they don't know. They don't know how much time has passed. Parker is "How long has it been?" You know? And Parker explains that the way they got there is because Chunk absorbed them. And they ended up in this place. He explains that there is this boat called the Hopgood, and that is Chunk's base. And but nobody goes in there because Chunk is too dangerous. They're all too afraid to go and face him. So they decide to stay away. But they've been here long enough that they've started going a little bit insane. They've even created their own society there's at least 100 people that have been absorbed by Chunk. Eric's a real dick. You know, he describes himself as like the survivalist, where he's like, you know, my life was kind of nothing before this, but after I got absorbed and I ended up here, like, these guys were eating bugs and lizards until I came along, you know. And so when I showed up, I was the one that like started hunting for them and getting food and stuff. And Wally's like, well, what do you even eat here? And Eric explains that they eat these weird alien bird things that live in this other world. Nobody else likes Eric. They kind of just like Eric. They let Eric do his thing, but nobody likes him. He's kind of the outsider. He's just a real dick. You know, he starts like bragging about how great he is at hunting and stuff, and Karen's like, why don't you stop blowing your own horn and tell Flash something useful? He's like, well, excuse me, Miss High and Mighty Prius. I don't hear any objections when I brought you dinner. She's just like, grow up. So Wally's like, Doc, what's going on here? And Parker is like, I'll tell you if you agree not to call me Doc. And so Parker explains about how Chunk has absorbed at least 100 people. Some have perished, others have simply disappeared, others have wandered off to form like different groups. He's like, it's quite fascinating from a sociological perspective. I've been taking notes for my paper. And as he's talking to Wally and explaining about this whole like society that's been created, one of the groups ambushes them. They're a group of cannibals. See, some of them created a gang, and they don't like the taste of the local fauna that lives, like flora and fauna that lives in this world, so they've resorted to cannibalism. He's like, Tom, Harry, fresh meat, give me a hand. And these guys come in to try and get Parker and Wally, and so Wally beats the shit out of them. And they get away. He's like, come on, Parker, keep walking. What was that all about? And that's when Parker explains to him that some people have resorted to cannibalism. And Wally's like, you're joking. And he's like, it's no joke. I suspect it accounts for our dwindling population. So Wally's like, how have you survived? Parker's like, we were at quite a loss until Eric arrived. He had wilderness training, an army ranger, he organized us, taught us how to hunt. He's quite obsessed with getting revenge on Chunk. Quite a bit of history there, you know? And he's rather obsessed with Miss Prius as well. And that's when Eric comes up and he's like, hey, Parker, Flash! Saw what you did to Tom, Dick, and Harry. Nice work. This changes the whole balance of power. I'm okay with actually introducing you to the rest of the gang now because you clearly seem quite helpful to our society. So let's go back to and we'll show you the dick. And so Eric takes Wally back to their little society, and they've built some houses because they've been there for years. I think at one point Eric mentions he's just like, "Hey, you're the Flash, right? Like, how'd that like? Weren't you on trial?" He's referring to the trial of the Flash, and Wally's like, "That wasn't me. That was a different Flash. Man, you've been in here for a while. You know, like how long have you guys been in here? Like that's insane." I think Parker even mentioned something himself about like how long he's been in here too. But yeah, that's kind of like an idea that like Eric has been in here for at least 5 years. Like I would say at least like 3 years, because I would think the trial of the Flash happened about 3 years ago within continuity. And so when Wally visits this society, he meets a couple more people that live in this place. And he starts to realize that people have started building lives in this world. You know, so there's this couple, Bob and Lois. You know, they met and fell in love here, and they have a child now. And they explain why they've all been captured by Chunk. Bob is like, I told Chunk he had to bathe if he wanted to come into my science fiction store. Lois is like, hi, I asked him not to stare at my breasts. This is Jesse. Say hello, Jesse. And Jesse's like, I didn't get out of his way fast enough. And then there's this other guy that's like, I don't know what I did. I guess he didn't like my shirt. He's got like a Hawaiian shirt on, which I thought was quite funny. And so, everyone gets introduced to the Flash. Eric's like, he's going to be staying with us for a while. And Karen's like, do you have to wear a mask? And Wally's like, oh, right. My name's Wally West. And he, takes his mask off. Sometimes I forget I have it on. So Wally stays with them and has dinner, and that's when they realize that Wally has an insane metabolism. He's like, that was your third portion. At this rate, we're going to run out of food. We need to get more. And Wally's like, that boat's got to have victuals. And Eric's like, you want to go in there? Be my guest. So Wally decides to head to Chunk's boat to try and get some food. And he does that. He zooms off, he heads into the boat, grabs a bunch of food. Chunk actually sees him there, and he's like, "Oh, that's my food!" But Wally gets out of there and drops the food off at the house. He explains his life to these people about what's going on. He tells them how he won the lottery and stuff. And then Wally starts to yawn, and he's like, well, that's the other half of my problem. I have to eat all this food, and then I crash. I gotta go to sleep. And Eric's like, you can bunk with me. And Wally's like, okay, man, point me in the right direction. So Eric tells him where he sleeps. So Wally goes to bed, and as he's sleeping, Karen comes in and tries to hook up with him. She's like, the way that this society works, we all eventually get paired off because there's only so many of us, so we all end up with someone. And I'm going to end up with Eric at some point. And I don't want to end up with Eric. I want to end up with you. Because Wally's got it in his head that they're going to be able to escape. But everyone's been telling Wally, you better get used to living here because you're not getting out. And so Karen is, thinking of the future and being like, Wally, you're not getting out, and I want to be with you. I don't want to be with Eric. Wally's like, I'm sorry, Karen, but I got to get out of here. And Karen's like, well, I'll wait as long as it takes. I'll wait for a long time, but you're probably going to be waiting for a long time, and there's only so long I'm going to wait before it's too late. So you should probably think about this, Wally, just in case you don't escape. And Wally's like, she's right. I am interested in her. But Wally also has a girlfriend, so, he doesn't really want to take things forward with Karen. And Eric also interrupts their little conversation, which is quite awkward. He's like, excuse me. And then he leaves. Wally's just like, great. Just great. So the next morning, Wally decides that he's got to go and talk to Chunk. He's got to go and deal with him. Because Chunk is possibly the only way that he's going to get out. Parker says that, he should try and talk to Chunk about, opening up about his feelings. Because that would be a way for Chunk to be able to possibly come onto their side and help them get out. Wally's like, I'm not a doctor, man. I'll go talk to him, but I'm not going to try and, do any sociological experiments on him or, try and be his therapist. So Wally heads off to go talk to Chunk. And possibly fight him. And Eric's like, whoa, why'd you send him off to go after Chunk? If he riles him up, then we're all in danger. And Parker's just like, what more can Chunk do to us? And Eric's like, I don't want to know. And there's another problem. I have reason to believe that some of the gangs are banding together to attack us. And so he's like, wise up, Parker. For our women, we'll need every hand to survive. Flash could have been a big help. And so they prepare to fight these gangs that seem to be coming to attack them. And Wally heads off to Chunk's boat. And as he enters it, he finds that there's a ton of, machinery and stuff inside. He puts two and two together and he decides that Chunk must be trying to find a way to turn himself back to normal. And that's when Chunk shows up and he's like, what are you doing? And Wally's like, I believe I can help you with machine. He's like, what do you know about my machine? You lie, like all the smooth popular people. He's like, hey man, I know you can't eat regular food, so you won't mind if I raid your larder. You think you've got a weight problem? Watch this. And he, like, eats all this food, and he's like, I'm just like you. Like, I have this problem where I have to keep eating. And Chunk's like, then you know how I feel. And Wally's like, Chunk, I know exactly how you feel. And I'll tell you something else. With your brains and my connections, you could write your own ticket. And Chunk's just like, it's too late for me. They won't let me back. I know the courts. And so Wally's just like, dude, there are people that have done things that they regret, and they've gotten off of it. Like, if you just explain to them what's happened, like, why this is going on, I'm sure that I'm sure you'll get out of this. And once you're out there, with your brains and how smart you are, like, you'll make an easy living out there. You'll be great. You'll be a great guy. Like, you'll be awesome. You could become, like, a great scientist or something, create all kinds of crazy inventions. Doesn't that sound great? And, Wally's just like, can't you please help me, like, get the people out that you brought here? Like, can you tell me how to get them out? Like, how do you get out? And Chunk's just like, I can't tell you that because I don't know. The machine throws me out whenever it feels like it. It's like on a timer. I can't really, like, come up with any reason as to, like, I can't control it. And Wally's like, well, how about, like, so when you hug people and they come into your body, can you do that? And, like, can you do that again while they're inside here and maybe that helps them get out? Like, can you grab people when you're about to disappear, like, back to reality and take them with you? And Chunk's like, I don't know, maybe that would work. Like, why don't we try it out? And Wally's like, well, why don't you stay here? I'll go grab everyone and bring them to the boat, and then we'll go. And Chunk's like, you better hurry. Like, I'm about to implode. Like, it's not going to be long, probably like 20 minutes. So if you don't hurry, it'll be too late and I'll implode. So you better do what you say. So Wally heads off. He's like, I'm not going to be long. He heads off to grab the people, and when he gets to their society, he finds that the gangs are all attacking them, and he's like, oh shit, what's going on? And Eric's like, they're attacking all of them. Must be 50 of them, and they're well armed, look at them. So Wally helps them fight back at these guys, and he explains to them that, like, Chunk is gonna possibly get them back to reality. And Eric's kind of refusing. He's like, no, like, we gotta fight these guys. Like, I don't trust Chunk. And Chunk then shows up and he's like, hey, you waited too long. And that's where the issue ends. That's where issue 10 ends. He shows up, he's just like, Stroy, I'm about to implode. Why are you taking so long? And so, as we move on to issue 11, because it takes place right after issue 10, this issue is written by Mike Barron with art by Jackson Geis this time. He's back. We continue right off where issue 10 left, where Chunk is mad because, like, the Flash is taking too long, and he's about to implode. Like, I'm going to implode, and I'm going to take this place with me. And they're all like, what does he mean? And that's when Wally explains that Chunk is a living black hole, and he has to consume 47 times his own weight in super dense material to keep him imploding to a worse place than this, if you can imagine. And Eric's just like, well, I think we should just attack him. Like, I think we should just take him out. Parker's just like, don't be absurd. You'll just upset him. And so, that's why, so at this point, like, everyone is getting up. Sorry, I'm just thinking how I'm going to explain this. So everyone's kind of getting, like, antsy about, like, Eric is getting upset about how, like, you know, they're all being attacked by these gangs. Chunk is getting upset because he doesn't know what he's going to do. He's like, I need to do something. I need to absorb people to stop myself from, like, if you're not ready to get out of here, then I need to absorb people in order to stop myself from imploding. The gangs all see Chunk and they're like, hey, that's the guy that trapped us in him. Like, that's the guy that trapped us in here. Get him! So they all attack Chunk, and Chunk just absorbs them all. He uses his power to absorb these guys. They're all like, ah! And they get absorbed into his body. They can't do anything to him as well. They try to attack him, and all of their weapons just go straight through his body. And so everyone's kind of looking on in horror. They're like, oh my god, he absorbed those people. And Eric is like, okay, now that we've established contact, we got to form an alliance with him. We'll wipe out the rest of these goons. And Wally's just like, Eric, forget the alliance. We got to get out of here. And Eric's like, there's no way out. This is our future. And Wally's like, Chunk, I'm going to come talk to you, alright? Just stay there. So Wally goes over and talks to Chunk, and Chunk is just like, all those people, like, I absorbed all of them and I feel their anger. You know, I couldn't stop myself. I felt what they felt. It was all ugly and twisted, just as bad as my thoughts, maybe even worse. Wally's just like, see, you're not that different. You know, this has been a learning experience for everyone, including you. You can go back now. We can lick this thing. And then Parker shows up and he's like, hey, Chunk, remember me? I'm your therapist. Chunk's just like, I remember you, Dr. Parker. You spoke about my complexes, my inadequacies. You cost a lot of money, Dr. Parker. And Parker's just like, hey, forget about the bill. And Chunk's just like, I'm still hungry. And he absorbs Parker. And we don't mourn him because Parker kind of sucks. You know, he's a bit of a douche. So Parker gets absorbed by Chunk. It's assumed that he's not dead. He's just been sent somewhere deeper where he's never going to get out. Wally's just like, Chunk, man, if you keep absorbing people, we're going to have a hard time getting them on your side when we get out of here. And that's when Chunk's just like, I'm no longer certain, like, I wish to return. What has society ever done for me? So Wally's like, come on, man, you can't stay here. I'll help you out. The Titans will help you out. And Chunk is just like, Dr. Parker wanted to help me out. Wally's just like, no, not with a psychiatric bill. Scientifically, with the matter transmitter. That's what counts. We'll figure out a way to make you normal again and get all these people out of here. And so Chunk's just like, what about all those people I absorbed? They hold me responsible. Wally's just like, don't worry about that. They'll forget all about that once you explain your matter transmitter. So Chunk agrees. He agrees to help everyone get out. And so he tells everyone to like go to his boat. And then he'll absorb the boat with everyone in it. And that when he implodes. And that should help them get back to reality. And so while they're waiting, Wally asks Karen how she's doing. Karen's just like, this might be the last time we see each other. So could you please take your mask off? Wally's just like, oh, yeah, of course. She's like, that's better. Thank you. And so Chunk's got a little sailor's hat on. He's like, cast off. And he implodes and the boat just goes boop and like disappears. Meanwhile, in reality, outside of Chunk's world, there's a garbage barge that's trying to be delivered. Like it's trying to be docked. And the city council douches come in and they're like, hey, you can't put this garbage here. We don't want your garbage. And the guy that owns the garbage barge is like, come on, man. Like, I got a family to see. I got a family to feed. Like, I gotta get rid of this garbage. Like, I'm just doing my job. And the council's like, no. Like, if you bring this garbage here, like, the city council voted for the landfill to be closed. You gotta keep going. And as they're arguing, that's when the Chunk's boat appears from the sky. It just goes poop, like in the sky, and just goes and crashes into the ocean, splashing everywhere. Wally saves Karen's life and gets her out, and then he goes and grabs the other people that are floating in the water, including Eric. But he can't see any side of Chunk. The police are there, and they're like, "Oh wow, Flash! Like, you went missing for you've been missing for months. What happened? Where's that Chunk guy?" Wally's like, I don't know. Like, have you seen him? Is he here anywhere? He's 500 pounds. This 500-pound dude. The cop's just like, 500 pounds? You don't think he could have survived, do you? And that's when Chunk comes out of the ocean and grabs onto the barge, and because he's such a big dude, the entire barge almost capsizes. It like comes out of the ocean. It's a garbage barge. He climbs up onto it and sits on the garbage barge. He's like, I did it! So they're like, is that your man? And Wally's like, yep. And so the cop's like, isn't that the man who robbed the art museum? Wally's like, yeah, it is, but please don't arrest him. He's got these bizarre gravitational powers which would make your weapons useless. He needs therapy, which I shall pay for if you could see fit to release him to me. And that's when the cop's just like, that's up to the courts, man. You gotta go ask them. So Wally goes to talk to Chunk. And he's like, do you want to come with me into town? The police want a statement. And Chunk's like, are they going to arrest me? Wally's like, nah, they just want a statement. Trust me. So he takes him to the police. And that's when one of the cops is like, I have a warrant for your arrest, Mr. Chester. And Wally's just like, no, officer, you can't do this. And that's when he's like, I got to. He's like, look, you come to my house several weeks ago when I fought Blue Trinity. He's like, that's right, you know. I just now took the liberty of notifying your mother and girlfriend that you were alive. And Wally's like, well, thank you. But about the Chunk, you've seen what he can do. Do you really think you ought to arrest him? And the cop's just like, look, it's out of my hands. Like, I have to follow the law. This guy shows up, and it's a member of the council. It's Mr. Gilchrist, the guy that's trying to throw Wally out. He's like, just a minute, officer. He's like, I understand Flash caught that robber. Flash, we appreciate your efforts. We're reevaluating our position via your residency. Because they were talking about throwing Wally out because they see him as a problem for their town. But now that he's helped with the robbery, they are thinking of allowing him to stay. And Wally's like, it's mighty reassuring, Mr. Gilchrist. If you could persuade the police to release Chunk to me, I guarantee he'll be no trouble. I believe he could be an extraordinary asset to the community. He's like, how's that, Flash? He's like, why don't you bring the city council to the police boat pier tomorrow at 8 a.m.? I'll show you. And so when he heads outside, his mom and Tina show up. They're like, Wally, oh my god, like, you're okay. Like, we were looking for you all over the place. Red Trinity, you know, the JLI, Teen Titans, we were all looking for you. Wally's like, hey, this is Chunk. You know, he's going to be staying with us for a few days. Don't worry, he doesn't need any more than I do. And they're all like, huh. Meanwhile, Eric and Karen have, like, a bit of an awkward moment where Eric's just like, you know, I guess that's it. Like, I'm just going to go off and be a warehouse supervisor if they'll have me. What are you going to do? And she says, like, I'm going to write a book and then see if it gets turned into a movie. Though maybe I'll just pitch it as a movie before I even write the book. And Eric's just like, that's a good idea. Need any help? Karen's just like, maybe. Why don't you give me a call? And that's kind of the end of their thing. So it's kind of like hinting that, like, maybe Eric and Karen are actually going to end up together. Like we care. I don't give a shit about Eric. He's a douche. So Wally and his mom, Tina, and Chunk go back to their house where he sees that the entire yard has been dug up. He's like, what the heck happened here? And Wally's mom's just like, this place needed a tune-up. Like, the garden was a mess. Like, so I decided to do a little bit of fixing up and make this place, let nature take its course. Wally's just like, but the blackberry bushes, what happened to them? And that's when Tina's just like, I asked her not to do it. And he goes inside the house and he sees that the house has been pulled apart. And he's like, what is going on in here? And his mum's just like, you know, after your friends destroyed this place, I thought it needed a whole new look. Like, what this place needs is a woman's touch. And Wally's just like, Mom. And Tina just, like, sighs and is like, how many women's touches does it need? So they have dinner with Chunk. Chunk actually is like, has enough helpings. He gets offered another helping and he's like, no thank you, Mrs. West. I have to save my appetite for the morning. And Wally's just like, just don't eat the silverware. And so Wally and Tina go to bed and Tina's just like, what's the matter? And Wally's just like, I'm starting to notice that you and Mum don't get along. Do you? And Tina's just like, she's got a hell of a nerve. She doesn't talk to you for 10 years, and then she shows up and acts like, and like, starts treating you like her baby boy. And Wally's just like, yeah, she's old-fashioned like that. And so Tina's just like, do you know what she's been doing? Going through the whole house, making notes on how she plans to remodel. Wally's just like, she can't do that. This is my house. Tina's just like, she wants to redo this room too. Come to think of it, it is pretty shabby. Wally's just like, no, she's not coming in here. Why don't you do this room? She's just like, really? Wally's like, yeah, I'll let Mum have the dining room. That should keep her happy. And so, they go to sleep after that nice little moment. And so the next morning, Wally takes Chunk to the pier where he tells them that Chunk could be the one that will fix their garbage problem. So he tells Chunk to go onto the barge, and Chunk does so. They head out to the barge, and Chunk goes onto the barge and sits on it. And he's like, so what's going to happen next, Wally? And Wally's like, just wait a minute. Like, Mr. Gilchrist is even like, is he going to sit there and just like, somehow he's going to recontemplate like the fact that he robbed everyone? Chunk also mentions the fact of like, he's like, how do we know, like, how are we going to get out those other people that are trapped inside me? Because obviously he didn't get everyone out. There are still people in there. He's like, how are we going to get everyone else out? Well, he's like, that's something that we're going to have to figure out, Chunk. So Chunk sits on the garbage pile waiting to implode, and he does. He implodes and takes the garbage with him, but also because he implodes, Chunk disappears, and so Mr. Gilchrist is really upset. Also, his implosion causes a whirlpool that Wally decides to stop with his super speed, which he does. And Mr. Gilchrist is really mad at him. He's like, I've changed my mind about you staying here. You created a whirlpool that could have caused all sorts of havoc. And also, now the robber is gone with those diamonds. Like, what the heck, Wally? You just let him get away? Maybe we should throw you out. And so a reporter comes up to Wally and is just like, hey, I'm a reporter. I'm here to, like, ask you what happened here. Like, do you have any comments? Wally's just like, nothing. So he heads off to his psychiatrist to talk to him about what's going on. And the psychiatrist is like, you found Parker, eh? Serves him right. He's always been such an unctuous bastard. The thing about Wally's therapist is that he's too busy focused on himself and not Wally's problems. He's like, hey, look at this buck I shot. What do you think of that? And Wally's always just like, that's really cool, but can we talk about my problems? And so he's like, you think I'm responsible for all those people we failed to bring back? And the doc's just like, he's not my patient, you are. Like, Wally's just like, what about Chunk? Like, and that's when the therapist is like, what about him? He's not my patient, you are. You're not responsible for all the people he took with him. He is. So don't worry about it, okay? And that's when Wally's just like, glossing over these yawning philosophical questions for a minute, what am I going to do about my mother and Tina? I feel like I'm a piece of taffy being stretched two ways. And his therapist just ignores him, and he's just like, don't worry about it. It'll work itself out. How much would you say I weigh? And Wally's just like, Doc. And that's the end of the issue. That's where we end it. Is just Wally not getting any real good answers from his therapist about the worst therapist of all time. But yeah, that's the end of the Chunk arc for now. I'm sure the character will end up returning after his mysterious disappearance, his current implosion. Maybe will he ever get a cure to his powers? We'll probably find out in the future. But for now, we're gonna move on to Flash issue 12, which is a double-sized Flash issue with 2 stories in it. So yeah, let's get straight into that. Whether or not I do the second story will depend on how important it is. I might just talk about the main one, but we'll see. So issue 12 of the Flash begins with this man who works for this guy called Mr. Basaglia. We don't know much about him, but we just know his name. The guy that we're currently following, his name is Mr. Roberts, and he's gone to the Wall Street Bank to pick up a thing of cash because he's just made a delivery. So this is like the cash that he's receiving for the job that he's done. So he receives the cash in a briefcase. It's attached to his wrist, and he heads out to the car to get into it. He's like, all right, let's get on a roll. Let's roll. Let's get out of here. And as he says that, somebody starts running down the road at super speed. This guy in like a balaclava and stuff. He runs straight past Mr. Roberts, grabs the briefcase, and rips Mr. Roberts' hand off and takes the briefcase and runs away, like at super speed. So he comes in at super speed and pulls the briefcase so hard that he takes Mr. Roberts' hand off, and Mr. Roberts is just like, ah, my hand, ah, and there's like blood coming out of his arm. It's pretty fucked up. One thing you're gonna learn is that like this is where like Mike Baron's Flash stories start to get pretty weirdly violent during this arc, and this is actually his final arc. Like after these next 3 issues, Mike Baron is actually going to be gone, and he's going to be taken over by William Esmer Loebs. So this guy takes the briefcase, rips off Mr. Roberts' arm, and then with the briefcase heads back to talk to his mysterious boss. And his boss is like, take off the mask. It's like, I got it. Went off without a hitch. There it is. Can I have the stuff now? Where is it? He's like, yeah, sure. There it is. Right there on the table. Take it. So the guy that stole the briefcase goes over to the table and he grabs like some drugs and he stabs him into his arm. And he, like, when he took the mask off, he was all like frail and decrepit looking and like disgusting. But as soon as he injected the drugs into his arm, his hair grew back and he became all young looking again. We find out that this man's name is Kugel, and he has a friend named Lenny who is also working for this mysterious boss. And he says that like he's just like, you're gonna have to prepare for your next job, Kugel. And he's like, and make sure you bring Lenny with you next time so that you got more help. And so we're kind of left off of like, ooh, like there's this mysterious drug thing going on, like this drug operation going on, and who's this mysterious guy that's ordering these people around? So we head back to Wally's mansion, and the cops go to talk to him about what's recently happened with Mr. Roberts. They tell Wally about everything, about like this guy that just took the briefcase, and so Wally is obviously like, I gotta investigate this and find out what's going on. At the same time, Wally talks to his mom about the fact that, like, she needs to stop having problems with Tina, because Tina's currently, working on their bedroom, renovating their bedroom, and his mom is working on renovating the kitchen, and his mom is getting all pissy because she's like, oh, she's choosing the wrong colors for the bedroom, and Wally's just like, please, mom, just let Tina do that, like, you really need to get your own place. And his mum's just like, oh, I guess I could move out and become a waitress again, and like trying to make him all feel bad. And he's like, fine, like, no, you can stay here, like, you don't have to worry. She like guilt trips him into allowing her to keep living there. And then Tina gets home, and that's when his mum's just like, I'm gonna go make some roast beef, because she has beef with Tina and doesn't want to talk to him. And then Wally and Tina have a conversation about his mum's problems with the bedroom. And as they're kissing, his mum interrupts them, and that pisses Tina off. Mum's just like, hey, what kind of dressing do you want on your dinner? Like, you know for a fact that, like, she knew that she was interrupting something, and that she did it on purpose. But yeah, so we move on to where we get to meet Mr. Basaglia himself. He is a gang boss, or a mobster, and he needs Anatoly. Remember Anatoly? He's one of the Red Trinity members. He needs Anatoly to deliver some ingredients to this man named Dr. Bortz. And so Anatoly agrees to help because he's got super speed. And he goes to deliver the ingredients to Dr. Bortz. And this man that has given him the job to deliver this then reports to Mr. Basaglia. Sorry, that wasn't Mr. Basaglia. That was one of his representatives. He then calls Mr. Basaglia and tells him that, like, the package is on its way. And so Anatoly goes to deliver the package. He's like, man, we're having a great, like, this is awesome. Like, Catalyst Courier Service Inc. is a go. We're finally got our business in like, our business is going pretty well, because, like, they've started this business. Red Trinity and Dr. Bortz have started a business of, like, a courier business, so that they can do some good. And so as he's delivering this package, two guys who are running at super speed, and they're wearing masks, come up from behind Anatoly and are trying to get the package from him. He's like, ah, shit, I gotta outrun these guys. And he trips over a rock and tumbles across the road and barely dodges a car, and then, like, smacks into, like, the ground. And so this guy comes along, and like, the two guys that were chasing after him find Anatoly on the ground, and one of the guys beats the shit out of Anatoly while the other guy takes the package, and they both leave him there, like, with, like, a broken rib and stuff. So he calls Wally, and Wally's just like, Tina, like, Anatoly's in trouble. We gotta go get him. He's in the hospital. Or it's, no, it's not Anatoly. Anatoly calls for a emergency. So an ambulance comes to get him, and then the hospital calls Wally later. That's what happens. There's no timestamp, so it never says, like, later on or something. It's just Wally gets a call. But he gets a call from the hospital to let him know that Anatoly is at the hospital, and so he and Tina decide to go to the hospital to see Anatoly. And Wally's mom is like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to throw out dinner then. And Tina's just like, why? Why can't you just put it in the freezer? You don't have to throw it out. And so after that little tiff between Tina and Wally's mum, Tina and Wally head off to the hospital, where Wally's just like, why did you have to talk that way to her? Tina's just like, what? All I told her to do was to put it in the freezer. She's like, Wally, I'll make it easy for you. Either she goes or I go. And he's like, okay, I'll talk to her. I don't want you to go. I need you. I love you. And Tina's like, I love you too. What about these super speedsters? And at the hospital, they learn that, like, it starts with, like, this drug called Velocity 9. No one's seen it. No one knows where it comes from. But whenever the junkies slow down enough, you can tell that they're wasted. And Wally explained, he's just like, you know, they look prematurely aged, exhausted, red eyes, starving, salivating. And Wally also explains that, like, the few policemen that know about what's going on believe that drug enables the user to move for short bursts at extraordinary speed, but it also wastes them. That's when Tina's just like, man, the craving must be intense. So they go in to talk to Anatoly, and Anatoly explains to them why, like, about the package that he was delivering, and Wally's just like, who hired you? And Anatoly says, like, Mason. He's an olive oil importer. And so Wally goes to talk to Mason, and it's at this point that Wally learns that Mr. Basaglia is actually his neighbor, who he believed was just like an olive oil proprietor, but it turns out that he was actually a like gang boss the whole time and a drug dealer. So this guy tells Wally to get out of his office, and so Wally leaves because Wally's looking for Mr. Basaglia, and this guy's like, I'm not telling you anything, get out. And Mr. Basaglia decides that he wants to invite Wally to his house for a party because they're neighbors, so that they can get to know each other, because he believes that Wally can help him because people are stealing his products and are stealing his drugs, and he wants to stop it from happening because he's not trying to get Velocity 9 out there into the public and be like a big thing. And it will ruin him if that happens. It's supposed to be this secret thing that he has that's not supposed to be used by people. So he tells this woman named Trudy to go and invite Tina over for a party. So she goes to Wally's house and invites Wally to come to the party. Wally agrees. And she says that she's Mr. Pasaglia's niece. Wally agrees to go to the party, and he brings his mum with him. And while he's on the phone with Tina lets him know that she's going to be staying at the hospital, so she's not going to be able to come to the party. And Wally's like, okay, well, I'm going to get some good leads if I possibly... I might be able to get some good leads at this party. So I'll see you later. So Wally heads off to the party with his mom, and on the way there, they have another argument about her moving out of his house, and she's like, we haven't really had a lot of time, and I just think we should be spending as much time together as possible. And Wally's just like, I'm 20 years old, I don't need my mother living with me. Like, what? And she's just like, Wally, I don't understand. You and your father... And I never, I don't understand you. Your father and I never restricted your activities. Maybe we should have been stricter. Wally's just like, Mom, I'm not a bank robber. I'm an exceptional human being, for God's sake. She's just like, don't use that language. And that's when they get interrupted by Trudy. She's like, oh, it's great to see you. Glad you came. This is my uncle. And he's like, Wally, I'm Nick Basaglia. Understand, we're neighbors. And Wally's just like, pleased to meet you, Nick. You have quite a collection, Nick. And he's like, yeah, this collection's great. Hey, look, I'm just a simple retired importer, but hypothetically speaking, what if certain superpowered individuals were interfering with my business? And Wally's just like, what if your business were drugs, hypothetically speaking? And Nick's just like, if it were, my drugs are nowhere near as bad as their drugs. Whatever they are, I want to show you something. And so he brings Wally down into his basement where there's this, freezer. He's like, I found the body of one of those junkies, and I was keeping it in here so that the cops wouldn't know. I thought best not to report it. And Wally's just like, oh my God. And he looks at this body, and it's, all shriveled up with no hair or anything. And it's like, this is what happens to one of them in the advanced state of addiction. Wally's just like, shut the lid. And Nick explains, and he's like, whoever is behind this has launched a concerted campaign against me. They're ripping off my runners, stealing my shipments. They're trying to put me out of business. And Wally's just like, that's a real shame, Nick. A real tearjerker. I just hate it if your two businesses should tear each other apart. Nick's just like, no, Wally, that's not how it is. I can't lay a glove on these speeders. They got the muscle to squeeze me out and flood the streets of Velocity 9. Unless we work together. And so, meanwhile, Kugel and I'm guessing that this guy is Lenny, are waiting for their boss to show up, and they end up, like, just getting into a fight. He's like, shut up or I'll stab you, I'll fucking kill you if you don't shut up. And he's just like, when is he gonna come with, like, when's the boss gonna show up with our drugs? And he's just like, oh, if you say you're gonna stab me, then why don't you go ahead? I'll stab you right back. And they start stabbing each other at, like, super speed. And that's when their boss shows up and he's like, gentlemen, sorry I'm late. I was unavoidably detained. Won't you come in? He's like, yeah, we got the package. Do you have the drugs for us, boys? Like, do you have the drugs for us, boss? And that's when their boss is revealed to be Vandal Savage. He's like, you have done well. Please help yourselves. And he's got, like, a table with drugs on it. So it turns out Vandal Savage is now a drug boss. He was a serial killer before, now he's a drug boss. Trying to get those drugs on those streets. Get the money. That's how you get the money. You know. Vandal is realizing that the times are changing and that he needs to become a part of it. You know, criminals are having to update their means. You know, drugs are really in right now, so get in on that business. And so going into issue 13, which is also written by Mike Barron with art by Mike Collins now, no longer Jackson Guys. We start off right where the last issue left off. Vandal Savage allows these two men to have their drugs. She's like, this is everything that you need to bring you up to speed. And so they take the drugs, and they go from being all decrepit and ugly to being, you know, normal again. They're like, yeah, give me 5 on that. Woo, this feels great. And Vandal Savage is just like, glad you're feeling great, because I've got a little chore for you. And they're like, name it, Savage. Man, I'm burning up with energy. I have to do something evil. And that's when Vandal says that, like, there's a party going on, and he wants them to go to the party because there'll be all sorts of jewels to steal. And there's also somebody there who he wants a piece of. And he's like, specifically what piece? Something he treasures most? I want his legs. And his name is Wally West. And so the guys agree, and they zoom off to go to the party. Meanwhile, at the party, Nick and Wally's mother, is it Mary? It might be Mary. I can't remember her name. They start to get along really well. And they have a conversation about, like, you know, Wally, like, what's it, he's like, what's it like living with Wally? And she's like, it's great, but, like, I don't like the fact that he's living with a married woman. He's like, oh, he's living with a married woman, huh? And she's like, yeah, I wish he ended up with, like, young Trudy. Like, Trudy's great. And he's like, well, who knows? Maybe he will end up with her in the future. And, you know, we already know Tina's history, so the way that Wally's mum talks about her is just, I do not like it. Like, we know that Tina is like, yes, she's technically still married, but she's trying to get a divorce put through, you know, because her husband was an abusive piece of shit. So Wally starts getting along really well with Trudy. He actually learns from Trudy that her Uncle Nick adopted her when her father was shot to death in a barber shop, which is insane. She's like, would you like a drink, Wally? He's like, yeah, my super speed will probably allow me to burn off the alcohol just by running around the house. So let's see how much I can drink. And as they're talking, this creepy guy comes up that she calls Uncle Al. He's a business partner of Nick, and he's hitting on her, Trudy, and she's like, go away, Uncle Al, like, get off of me. He's like, ugh, I don't remember when you were friendlier. She's like, that was a long time ago. Take off. You don't want me to tell Uncle Nick. He's like, go ahead. You're nothing but a pro, and you know it. It's like, goodbye, Al. Well, he's just like, what a creep. How about I teach him a lesson with super speed? And so he uses his super speed to zoom around, like, Uncle Al, and just, like, he pulls his pants down and then takes off all of his clothes until all Uncle Al is wearing is a pair of boxers. which is pretty funny. It's like, they don't call me the Flash for nothing. And everyone's laughing at Al. Trudy's like, hey, why don't you come to my room? Like, I want to show you some stuff. And Wally's like, yeah, sure. Sounds great. So they go to Trudy's room, and she's got, like, a ballet bar and stuff. So, like, it's revealed that Trudy knows how to do ballet. And Trudy's like, so what do you do all day when you're not being the Flash? And Wally's just like, I just do, like, rich person stuff. Look at all my investments. Reminds me, I'm supposed to call my broker. Just keeping up with this and that. And she's like, do you do everything at hyperspeed? And Wally's just like, not everything. And they almost kiss when somebody crashes the party and Wally has to go check it out. So he heads out to the party to check out what's going on, and it's the Velocity 9 creeps. They've come to the party to get, like, Wally, to get a piece of Wally and steal jewelry and stuff. Uncle Al's just like, damn punks, think you can storm in here? And he's got a gun. I guess he put his clothes on real fast. Some time has passed, so enough time for him to put his clothes on. So he pulls his gun on these guys, and one of them just grabs the gun at super speed and pulls it out of his hand so fast that he rips Uncle Al's finger off with it. It's disgusting. You just see his finger and there's blood coming out of it. And then so Wally comes in as the Flash and kicks this guy in the gut and then beats the shit out of these guys. They try to fight him, but Wally's just too good. He fights them, and he ends up throwing one of the guys, like, out of a window. But he manages to get back on his feet, and this guy runs off while the other guy gets captured by Nick's guys. And they're like, we gotta go talk to this guy. Let's see what he knows. And Wally's actually having a hard time getting steady because he's been drinking too much. The alcohol is still actually affecting... He hasn't had enough time to burn off the alcohol yet, so it's affecting his head a little bit. But he goes down to the basement with Nick and his guys, and that's when they reveal that this guy is Cougar. I think that was his name. One of the Velocity 9 guys. He's all decrepit and stuff from using the drugs. And this guy's like, alright, let's get all the information we can out of him. And he goes to slap this guy in the face. And because the guy's like, drop dead, I'm not telling you anything. So Nick's friend goes to smack him in the face, and Wally's just like, no. There's no need for violence, Mr. Wilford. Has anyone notified the police? And Nick's just like, Wally, let me talk to you for a minute. And he's just like, we know that the cops aren't going to help us. We got to do this ourselves. We know that the cops just don't know what they're doing. They don't know any about what's going on, especially when it comes to, like, superpowers and stuff. And so Wally's just like, what do you suggest? And Nick's just like, go home. Let us question this guy. Once we've wrung him out, we'll have a better idea where we stand. And that's when they realize... Wally realizes that the guy is dead. He's like, I don't think your methods are approved by the Red Cross. And that's when they realize that the guy has died from a stroke. And so Nick's just like, there, you see? For all we know, it was your blow to the head that killed him. And Wally's just like, I can live with that. And so... they open up his wallet and they find out the guy's name is Jarrett Kugel, 32 years old. He's a broker for Merrill Lynch. Gold Am-X, plenty of cash. And Wally's just like, what's that clipping? And he sees a clipping and it says, Seek challenge? Suffering from Rubinstein-Bear syndrome? Are you highly motivated? Easily bored? Subject sought for biochemical control of moods. 1819 Charter Street. And so Wally's just like, I guess I'll check it out some other time, but I need to go to sleep right now. I'm tired. And so Nick tells him to go home and get some rest, and they agree. So Wally heads home with his mum, and he's like, thanks for the party. And Nick's like, yeah, we enjoyed having you. And this is when it's revealed that I don't know if Trudy is actually Nick's niece. I don't know, or they just have a really creepy relationship, but her and Nick start making out, and it's revealed that Trudy is a porn actor, and that Nick plans on roping Wally into doing a porn movie for him. He specifically says blue movie. I'm guessing because maybe they can't have the actual word porn in comics at this point in time. Who knows? Or maybe it's just a reference to Blue Movie, which is a erotic film. But yeah, they plan on getting Wally into an erotic film with Trudy, and that's Nick's true plan. No joke. That's exactly what he said. He's like, Flash in a Blue Movie, that'll sell heaps on the foreign market. So it's even like they may plan on filming it illegally, against Wally's knowledge. The plan is to get him in bed with Trudy and then film him without his knowledge and sell it on the foreign market. I think that's kind of what it's hinted at that Nick is planning. So Wally heads home to Tina. She's like, where have you been? He's like, over at my neighbor's place. How's Anatoly? And Tina's like, better. And she's like, I missed you. He's like, I missed you too, Tina. And then he just goes to sleep. He just falls asleep. You feel bad for Tina because Wally isn't really committing to their relationship super well. He's being kind of a shitty boyfriend, especially because he almost cheated on her with Trudy. And so Vandal Savage is explaining to his lackeys that, Mr. Barnes and Mr. Kugel by themselves were unable to accomplish the task that he'd given them. But he's like, the three of you should be capable. Mr. Basaglia is about to send some guys in, some of his guys are about to attack our building. So what I want you to do is go out and stop them. So here's some drugs, and they should be here any minute now. So he gives the guys some drugs. Specifically, what's the name of the? What's the name of it? I'm blanking on it, but it's he gives them some needles. He gives them some needles, some syringes, and so Mr. Basaglia's guys attack the building. They get ready to burst through the door, but before they can, these guys come zooming out of the door and they stick their syringes into Mr. Basaglia's men, pumping them full of Velocity 9. And then bring them into Vandal Savage. And they're all just like, whoa, what's going on? I feel like I'm full of energy. What have you done to me? What have you done to us? Vandal Savage is like, Velocity 9. My humble creation. It's a drug. And you're all hooked on it. And once you get hooked, you're addicted for life. And if you don't get the drug, you will age fast over time. So, I'll keep supplying you the drug if you do what I want. He's like, what do you want us to do? And Vandal Savage explains that he wants them to go and get Mr. Basaglia. Vandal Savage is like, I had planned to eliminate him, but now I've changed my mind. And so he says that he reckons that, not all of them might not be able to, some of them might die on their way to Mr. Basaglia, but he's sure that at least one of them will get to him and bring him back to him. So he's okay with, he doesn't care if most of them die as long as one of them make it. So they run off to go get Mr. Basaglia. As soon as they run off, one of them gets hit by a truck and just goes... he just runs and gets hit by a truck. Because the drug causes him to, be all, weird in the head. And so they don't think straight and stuff. So this guy runs straight into a truck and dies. Another guy runs off a bridge and drowns. And so only two of them actually make it to Mr. Basaglia. Mr. Basaglia is about to have sex with Trudy. And it's assumed he put a condom on because he's talking about how, he doesn't want her to, pick up any diseases. He's just like, I love it when you talk dirty. It's so weird. And that's when these guys jump through the window and grab Nick and take him away. They jump out the window with him. And they bring Nick to Vandal Savage. And he's like, who the hell are you? And what have you done to my boys? Vandal explains who he is, and he's like, your boys are mine, just as you are now mine. I have addicted them to Velocity 9, you see. At first I had planned to simply drive you out of business, take over your distribution. The key, you see, is selective addiction. Young stockbrokers and lawyers are highly motivated, highly intelligent. I intend to place the city under my control. The addiction is so powerful that I have but to suggest a stockbroker kill the lawyer and it is done. And then the stockbroker actually kills the lawyer. He stabs the lawyer to death. And he's just like, I was speaking rhetorically. I didn't mean for you to actually kill him. And so while Wally is asleep, his mum comes to wake him up, and he's like, what? Where's Tina? And his mum says, Tina went back to the hospital. It's Trudy from next door. She's terribly upset, Wally. And he's like, what's she upset about? And that's when Trudy comes in, and she's just like, they took Uncle Nick. Will you save him? And Wally heads off to save Uncle Nick from Vandal Savage. And that's where we end off on issue 13. And so the next issue is obviously issue 14, which is the final issue of this Vandal Savage saga. So we're about to find out if Wally can save Nick from Vandal or if Vandal's going to win. I wonder what's going to happen. Surely the hero isn't going to win. That would be insane. So issue 14 begins with Wally West making his way to the location that they had found in the Velocity 9 addict's wallet. So he heads to the address, and he just barges right into the room, and he's like, to himself, he's like, shit, I shouldn't have run into this room so fast. And because as he runs into the room, he realizes that it is, it's got Vandal Savages in there, he's got his Velocity 9 junkies, Nick is in there as well, and they all jump Wally. Wally fights back, but then Vandal grabs him and is just like, I was going to simply take your legs and leave you a cripple, but now I have an inspiration. Stop struggling! And he smacks Wally in the face, knocks him out, and then puts him on a table, and he's like, I think it would be a great idea if we tested these drugs on you to see what would happen, because you've already got super speed, and I want to know what happens if somebody who has super speed already gets pumped with Velocity 9. And Nick's just like, is this necessary? Savage is like, yes, of course it is. I'm all about experimentation and just seeing, like, curiosity, seeing what happens. And I am eager to find out what happens when I inject him with this Velocity 9. So he injects Wally with the Velocity 9, and Wally feels it boiling inside of his body. He's like, it's like acid in my skin, in my bloodstream. And he, like, gets up so fast that he creates a sonic boom just by moving. And then he, like, hits the two Velocity 9 junkies that are, like, beside him out of the way, creating sonic booms each time. And then he's just like, like, my body, it's in so much pain. And he, like, runs out of the apartment and down the street. And as he runs past everything, like, a million sonic booms, like, go off. And, like, the cars around him, all the glass is shattering. And he's just like, as, like, he's just, like, intense. His speed is so intense that, like, he's just destroying, like, everything around him. And it's not just the cars' glass that he's shattering, it's the glass of the buildings, too. So, Vandal is like, shit, maybe I should have given him a bigger dose. And Nick's just like, you idiot, I could have gotten him to cooperate. And Vandal's just like, shh, you dare call me an idiot? This is all going to go according to plan, because I never give up. We'll find him eventually, and if we work together, will make sure that Velocity 9 goes onto the streets and becomes a big deal. And I'm sure that's exactly what you want, Nick. Because we're going to end up getting lots of money from this. You know, and so Wally decides that he doesn't want to go back to his mum and Tina because he doesn't want to see him he doesn't want them to see him like this. So he's like, I gotta go somewhere else. So he heads to Trudy's place, where he finds Trudy, and he passes out, and then he wakes up later. He's like, oh, how long have I been out? She's like, 6 hours. I told your mum not to worry. You called and said you would be longer than usual. And, he asks about Tina, and she's just like, who's Tina? And then he explains to her that Tina is his girlfriend, but they're kind of going through a lot of stuff right now. He's like, I'd love to tell you, but I got Vandal Savage on my hands, and he might be more than I can handle. And that's when Trudy asks, like, who's Vandal Savage? He's like, where do I start? He's this immortal murderer who has started pushing Velocity 9 as a drug. He's become a drug lord now because it's his next step to, like, it's the closest thing that he can be to being a leader again, to, like, have control over people, because that's something that Vandal consistently craves. And during the 80s, what's the best way to control people? By pushing drugs onto them and getting them addicted, because it makes them need him, and that's what he loves. So Wally limbers up and he puts his mask on to go look for Vandal. He's like, I've got to get out of here. I've got to get back on this search for Vandal. And Trudy's like, hey, before you go, let me give you this. And she gives him a kiss. So already Wally is cheating on Tina. He's like, I'm off. And as he's about to run away, he trips over. Wally has lost his speed. The Velocity 9 being pumped into his system has gotten rid of his powers. And then Nick shows up and he's like, Wally, I'm glad the drug didn't kill you. She's like, Nick, are you alright? He's like, that was my favorite niece. Wally's just like, I thought you'd been kidnapped by Vandal Savage. And that's when Nick explains that, like, he's like, I'm in business with Vandal now. He promised me all this moolah. In fact, I've agreed to accept Mr. Savage as my partner. And that's when Vandal shows up and he's like, I heard the news. My drug has taken away your powers. How delightful. And he punches Wally in the head. And he's like, now that the powers have been taken away, what will happen if we give you the drugs again? My idea is that it will make you like them. Like my lackeys. And it will make you one of my lackeys. So one of his junkies is like, should I put the drugs into him, boss? And Vandal's like, no. Tie him up. Put him away. We'll deal with him later. So Wally gets locked in a room downstairs. And Wally's just like, maybe me losing my powers isn't such a bad thing. Like, maybe it's time I actually slowed down and started living, like, maybe this is my opportunity to live life at a normal pace. Maybe that will make my life better. Like, maybe this is my calling of, like, to stop being a superhero. And as he's thinking to himself, Dr. Bortz gets thrown in with him. While he's just like, Dr. Bortz, what are you doing here? And Dr. Bortz explains that he was hired by a pharmaceutical agency to develop a nerve stimulant, but it turned out that they actually hired him to make Velocity 9. And that's when Wally reveals to him that Basaglia is actually a kingpin. And he was like, he told me he was trying to stop Velocity 9. And Bortz explains, and he's just like, no, he's seeking his own source. And Wally's just like, how could you? And Bortz is just like, how was I supposed to know? Like, I'm a scientist. If somebody wants me to help them with science, like, if somebody tells me that we're going to be making some grand steps in science, like, I'm going to believe them. I didn't know they were trying to make a drug. Wally asks Bortz Dr. Bortz to actually take a look over him, like, because he explains to Bortz that he's lost his powers because the drug's been put into his system, and he feels like he may be, like, aging from, like, the symptoms of the drug, so he asks Bortz to look him over to see if he is, but Bortz tells him that there's nothing about him that's different. He seems completely fine. Like, the drug hasn't affected him in that way, so he must have gotten lucky. And that's when Trudy comes in. She's like, psst. And Wally's just like, oh, look, it's her. Trudy's like, hey, I'm here to help. And he's like, why? And Trudy explains that, like, she's just like, not exactly sure. Like, I just don't really like this Vandal guy. Like, he'll be the death of all of us. I can see it in his eyes. And Wally's just like, and maybe you care about me a little bit? And she's like, maybe. I don't have much time. Like, can you feel your powers coming back at all? Like, are you feeling like they might be coming back? And Wally moves his arm up and down, and he's like, a little bit. Like, I'm feeling a little bit of power. How long have I been down here? And she's like, 3 days. Wally's just like, 3 days? Jesus. And Trudy tells Wally that, like, the place is crawling with Nick's cronies and Savage. So she's like, if you leave this room, you're not going to get very far. So Wally tells Tina to go next door and tell his mother. Oh no, go. He tells Trudy to go next door and tell Tina, but not his mother, because she'll only worry. And at the same time, she's just like, running back to your girlfriend? He won't get there quickly. Wally's just like, it's not that. The relationship is ending pretty fast. And she's just like, when are you going to tell her? And Wally hasn't told her. Like, he doesn't even answer her. He's just like, when were you going to tell me about dear sweet Uncle Nick? And so Bortz kind of consoles with Wally over Tina and his thoughts of breaking up with Tina. And he's like, you said your powers are coming back. And Wally's like, maybe, but I feel awfully weak. You know, it's been days since I had any food. And so Vandal shows back up again. He's like, I hope you've been enjoying your time stuck down here. It's like, Savage, I knew you for a maggot, but I never thought you'd stoop to pushing drugs. And that's when he's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, I've spent my entire time, like, you know, I've been with, like, I've been with, like, kings, and I've seen, like, the pharaohs with their, like, medicine and stuff. Like, I've seen all sorts of different types of medicine be created and things, and you know, and I've been a leader, and I've been, you know, I've always had power, and I see this as the next step to me becoming powerful again, because if I push this drug onto people, you know, they will do my bidding in order for me to give them more of this drug. So this is my next step to becoming a powerful leader again, you know, with an iron fist against people's will. And then he knocks Wally out again and takes him in to see Nick. And then he forces Bortz to administer the drug on Wally again. Like, Bortz refuses, and he's like, if you don't do this, I'll put the drug in you, Bortz. So Bortz agrees, and he goes to put the drug in Wally, but instead he stabs Vandal. Vandal's just like, ah! And he, like, hits Dr. Bortz, and then Vandal's just like, ah! Because obviously the drug is fucking him up. And Wally's just like, hang on, just one sec, Vandal. Well, Vandal's, like, screaming in pain, and Wally kicks him in the face, gives him a good punch, and Vandal, tripping, decides to make his escape through the window. He crashes through the window and gets away, leaving Wally, like, gasping for air because, like, he's still reeling from the effects of the drug. He goes over to Dr. Bortz, who is currently out. He's not dead. He's just been knocked out. And that's when Red Trinity, like the remaining members of Red Trinity, because Anatoly is in the hospital, and Tina shows up with them. They decide to take Dr. Bortz to the hospital without Wally, because Wally's still recovering from the drug. Tina reveals that Trudy actually told them about it, so they came as soon as she told them. And Wally explains that Vandal has gotten away. Tina's just like, where's Wally? Wally's like, where's Vandal? And Wally is like, he ran away. He got away. So Wally asks Tina to help him get home, in which Tina does so. And when they get home, they find that all the workers that were working on the house are all gone. And Wally's mum is crying in the living room with the lights off. And Wally's just like, Mum, what happened? She's like, we're finished, Wally. She explains that she was on the phone to the brokers, and that because Wally's broker told him to put like lots of money in different investments and stocks, those stocks went down, and Wally has lost, not only has he lost everything, but he also owes hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the they're already the vultures are already lining up to put to get his assets. He's like, they took your She's like, they took your Lamborghini this morning. And that's where we leave off on issue 14, is that this massive revelation that, Wally has lost his fortune. He's got no money anymore. He's in debt. Hundreds of thousands of debt, which is not a good thing. And that's it for Mike Barron's run. We've come to the end of Mike Barron's run on The Flash. And now we move on to issue 15 of The Flash, which is written by William Mesner-Loebs, who is taking over The Flash for a while, and with art by Greg LaRocque, who is a newcomer. He hasn't done the art for Flash yet, so this is his first Flash. Like, both of them, brand new team. So let's see how they go. I've read this issue, and I'm thinking that I think Williams' writing. I think I'm already liking this team more than Mike Baron. Like, I don't think Mike Baron was bad. I just think that William is already creating a voice for Wally that I like a lot more than what Mike did. He makes Wally a much more likable person and less of a dick, So we get into issue 15, which pretty much leads off right from where issue 14 is. There's this woman named Lila Kaplan. She's a Velocity 9 drunkie, and she's currently going off of her latest high, and it's going to be her last high because there's no more drugs on the street since Vandal Savages left. So she got her last drug from Vandal, like a last supply from Vandal. She took it all, and now she's just running through the city. She dreads the fact that she doesn't have any more drugs. So she decides that the only way to make her happy, make herself happy, is to kill herself, and that's exactly what she does. She runs straight into a sign, and just it's assumed she just goes splat. She just runs into it and goes. It's really disgusting. There's blood, and there's a big the descriptive sound is skrunk, and so it's assumed that she not only she either decapitated herself from this sign, or she just splatted into it. I think it's a bit of both, but yeah, it's quite fucked up. First way we open up this issue is with this drug addicted woman killing herself, and then we find two more junkies whose name are George and Fred, who are also currently on their final Velocity 9 high, and they are going to kill themselves. They intend to kill themselves just like her, but they get stopped by Red Trinity. Red Trinity come in and stop them, and they've been hired by the local hospitals to go around and find Velocity 9 junkies and stop them from committing suicide and make sure that they come to their own safety. They're actually getting paid by the hospital as well, $100 a person, which is not bad. Meanwhile, Wally's dealing with the fact that he has no money. He's like, I've hit rock bottom. I got nothing. You know, Vandal got away. I got no powers. I got no money. You know, I'm going to be breaking up with Tina soon because our relationship is in the shits right now. I've really hit rock bottom right now. I'm hitting rock bottom. You know. And to make matters worse, his mum is still on his back with Tina. And so Wally's just like, I'm breaking up with her. Like, I'm breaking up with Tina. Or at least I plan to. I don't know how I'm going to tell her, but we're breaking up, Mum. So that'll make it. That's probably going to make you happy, right? And his mum's just like, splitting up? He's like, I just don't feel the same way toward her. We fight all the time, and now she's always throwing up the age difference. It's like she's always the teacher, and I'm always the pupil. And his mum's just like, well, I'm not happy, but I did always say. While he's just like, whatever, like, you know, let's not go into it, okay? And so, as they're talking, Tina then shows up. And obviously she has no idea about Wally's feelings. Wally kind of hopes that she's gotten the signals, but it's one of those things where he hasn't told her, but at the same time he's like, I mean, I would assume that she probably notices that something's off between us, right? Like, she has to. So Tina shows up, and she tells Wally to, like, she's like, hey, come on, like, let's see if your powers come back. Like, let's do a little bit of training and see if you're getting your super speed back. So Wally goes off with Tina, and they do a little training session where Wally does a bit of running to see if he's running any faster. And as he's running, he's like, I can actually feel like I had a good start there. Like, I feel like my speed is building up. Like, maybe I'm getting faster. Maybe I think my speed might be beginning to come back. Beginning to come back. And he stops running, and he's like, well... And Tina's like, congratulations, you're a normal, healthy, average human being. As she, like, stops the the timer. So I thought that was pretty funny. Where, like, Wally feels like he's got his super speed back, and Tina's just like, you're running like an average dude. And when they get back, Wally's kind of like, man, that took forever. It makes me wish my speed was back. And Tina stands up for him and is like, well, I like you just the way you are. And that causes his mum to be like, what a terrible thing to say. And they have a massive argument. They start fighting again. And Wally's just like, you know what? I think we were right about there being too many people in this house. And Tina's just like, you do? And she's like, yeah. And Wally's just like, yeah, I think one of us deserves to leave, like, should leave right now. And his mum's just like, who is it? And then Wally leaves and slams the door behind him. And then they fight again. Right after that, she's like, I hope you're happy. You drove your son out of the house. It's like, me, it was you that drove him out of the house. And they're just like, like, if this was an anime, there would be, like, the little lightning between their eyes as they're staring at each other. I can't wait for this to blow over. Part of me really wants Wally and Tina to, like, actually happen, because I know he eventually ends up with Linda in the future. But right now, I do like him and Tina together, because she does care about him. But in order for their relationship to work, his mum has to be around. And if his mum's not going anywhere, I'd rather they break up so that I don't have to keep dealing with reading all this fighting, because it's not fun to read, you know? But his mum does kind of start to show another side to her that we didn't get to see with Mike Baron. William Mesner, like, Loebs is starting to dig a little bit deeper into Wally's mom and not make her come across as such, like, a piece of shit. She's just like, I always told myself when I was young that I wouldn't become like these old bickering ladies, like my mom. And, like, why do I have to be the villain? Like, why am I the villain right now? Like, this isn't the kind of person that I want to be, And then, to make matters work, to make her feel even more like shit, she gets a phone call from a guy, who's asking for Tina McGee. She's like, no, it's not Tina McGee, can I ask who's calling? And he's like, yeah, I just wanted to see if the inscription was right, happy birthday, Mum, from Wally and Tina, or happy birthday, Mum, from Wally and, like, happy birthday, Mum, Wally and Tina, or happy birthday, Mum, from Wally and Tina. I gotta hear both ways. And, Wally's mum is kind of left speechless. So, it's assumed that Tina had ordered a cake for her birthday. For Mrs. West's birthday. And so now she's feeling a bit shit because she's been treating Tina like shit. And Tina was still going to do this really nice thing for her. Meanwhile, Wally is just chilling in his van. And, because he lost his Lamborghini, obviously, so Tina gave him, like a van that they rented. He's figuring out how to make money, because he's like, I got no money left, which means I'm going to have to figure out how to get some money, because I'm going to need a job or something. And while he's pondering how to make money, he comes across Chunk. Chunk shows up at Wally's new apartment, because Wally has also bought an apartment to stay in with what little money he has, which is almost nothing. Or at least this is the apartment that he plans on getting, because he has no home anymore. And Chunk reveals to Wally that he's a millionaire now. He's like, hey, Wally, like, what you said to me back in... Remember what you said to me back in that other dimension that we were in? And Wally's like, don't eat people? And he's like, no, after that. Wally's like, don't create alien dimensions filled with chaos and death? And Chunk's just like, no, you said you're a brilliant guy. You've invented a matter transmitter. You can write your own ticket. It turned out I could. I'm a millionaire now. Thank you. And in order to thank you, I decided that, here. And he gives, Wally a check. He's like, wow, thanks, Chunk. Like, you didn't have to do that for me. And so, Wally's like, this money is going to... could last us at least a few months. And he's also kind of bitter about it, because he's like, man, how could Chunk, a villain, become a millionaire while me, a superhero, is now poor? Like, it doesn't feel very fair. Wally enters his new apartment, and it's pretty shitty. There's light bulbs coming out of the ceiling, and parts of the ceiling are ripped open. There's pieces of furniture and shit all over the floor, and, like, the sink is a mess. And so as he leaves his apartment, he meets one of his neighbors, Mason Trowbridge. Mason asks Wally if he can help him with his fire alarm, because his fire alarm's broken. And he's like, can you hold up this so that I can, like, fix the fire alarm? And Wally's like, yeah, sure. And so he helps him fix the fire alarm, and he's like, oh, I've also got a rat problem. Would you be able to, like, try and get it with this can of beans? Wally throws the can of beans at the rat, and he misses it. He's like, not that fast, are you? And Wally's just like, nope. And so after that nice little meeting with his neighbor Mason, he meets another one of his neighbors for a little bit. This mysterious person wearing, like, a purple cloak opens up his door, and he's like, oh, hi, guess we're going to be neighbors. I'm Wally. And then, like, the guy just slams the door. Or the woman. I think he's the guy. Slams the door, and Wally's just like, That was weird. I guess in this neighborhood it doesn't pay to be too friendly. And as he leaves the apartment, he comes across his landlord, Mr. Gilchrist. And Mr. Gilchrist is just kind of a douche. He's just like, hey, like Wally's just like, I just lost all my fortune, and I'm like, hi, Mr. Gilchrist, sorry, I just lost all my fortune, and Mr. Gilchrist is just like, I don't care, you know, you're a punk, you'll always be a punk, and if you don't pay, I'll have you out of here, simple as that, see ya, and then he leaves, and Wally's just like, man, what a dick. And meanwhile, Tina heads off to the hospital to meet with her husband, Jerry, who was previously addicted to Velocity 9 and became a villain known as Speed Demon. He's currently recovering in the hospital. His hair is even growing back, which is nice. And he explains to Tina that Dr. Botts has asked him to help him cure the drug-addicted patients, like the people that were addicted to Velocity 9. So it seems like Jerry's redeeming himself, which is really cool. It's cool to see that. And Tina's just like, you could probably use some help. And Jerry's like, I'd like that a lot. So they're kind of like rebuilding their relationship. I don't know if they would end up back together, but like it seems like they're coming back to a basis where like Jerry wasn't always a bad guy. He only became a bad guy when he was addicted to the drug, and now that he's not addicted to it anymore, he's becoming the guy that Tina fell in love with again. You know? So Tina takes Jerry out of the hospital just to like give him a little help. I don't think he's leaving the hospital. She's just giving him a little help to like get to the bathroom or something. So they have a nice little moment. And as Wally's thinking about his dick of a landlord, this Velocity 9 dude runs up to him. He's like, hey, Wally, can I have a quick talk to you? And he's like talking at super speed, so Wally can't really understand what he's saying. And the guy's just like, hey, check this out. And he puts Wally's Flash costume on. He's like, ta-da! And Wally's just like, so fast. Did I look like that? And this guy that's run up to Wally is just like, Vandal Savage sent me to warn you not to interfere anymore. And Wally's like, what? I don't understand. What's with the get-up? Is this a... And then he like... This dude just like punches the shit out of Wally. He just punches the shit out of him and he said, I said Vandal Savage is alive. He doesn't want you to forget him. And he's like just beating the crap out of Wally, beating him to a pulp. And he's like, he can have you whenever he wants. He can kill you. He can rip off all your fingers or just do this again. Anything he wants. And he's just laughing in Wally's face, just beating the shit out of him. It's pretty fucked up. And then he runs away, and Wally is just like on the ground, like dying. And he like crawls back into his apartment building and collapses on the floor just as that mysterious neighbor of his with the cloak, like with the robes, opens his door and sees Wally on the ground, blood all over his face, all on the floor and on the wall. And Wally's just like, help. And so this mysterious person brings Wally into their apartment, and they're listening to the news about like Velocity 9 saving the people that have been like addicted to Velocity 9. He puts Wally on his little armchair and allows Wally to kind of like watch the news about Red Trinity. And that's where issue 15 ends. Like, what an ending. Already, I think that one issue was, like, better than all of Mike Barron's stuff. It was really well done. I think William did a really good job at, like, finishing or, like, continuing what Mike Barron had left for him. And it's, like, it's not easy for a writer to come on to a comic book when, like, a lot of stuff has already been set up by a previous writer, and so you kind of just got to continue that. And I think William did a really good job at continuing that and taking it on an interesting route, you know. And that ending of Wally just getting the shit beat out of him, being beat to a bloody pulp, like, about to die, it's a pretty haunting comic book image of seeing this dude at super speed just kicking the shit out of Wally, laughing in his face, just being a maniac. I loved it. It was really good. So next up, we're going to be moving on to issue 16, which is also written by, William, and with art by Greg. And it continues not long after issue 15. So issue 16 starts off with Jerry McGee, who was Speed Demon, basically thinking about everything that's happened to him and what he's been through, and now he's finally recuperating and getting a lot better. And Tina, who is his current wife, but they're, very strained because of his abusive ways, comes in and has a talk with Jerry, and they kind of, they start reconnecting, joking around a little bit and stuff. They talk about some stuff that's been going on. Tina makes a joke. She says, "What do you get if you cross the Batman with 600 pounds of grape jelly?" And Jerry's just like, "What?" "A very angry Batman." And they're just laughing their heads off. It's kind of cute. But at the same time, it's it wasn't that long ago that we saw him beat the crap out of her, so it's a little bit weird, but he is genuinely a good guy now. I'm just gonna say it now. As far as I know, because I've read ahead, Jerry does not do I become the Speed Demon again. He doesn't do that. At least not yet. He has I've read ahead, and he hasn't become the Speed Demon again. He is a good guy. He's turned straight. So they're not gonna do that whole thing. Tina talks about how her and Wally just aren't doing so well, and and how she's just thinking real bad about her relationship with Wally. And Jerry's just there's a lot of that going around at the moment. When I think about how I beat you up, I feel like shit. And Tina's just that was just because of the drug treatments that you were going through. It's not because of who you are, You're out of your head. And Jerry's just I still had no excuse for what I did. I was so crazy jealous. I kept taking the drugs. I could have killed you. And I don't even remember it. What a fool. And that's when they get interrupted by Mary. And she comes in, she's like, "Have you seen Wally?" And Tina tells Mary that Wally's in the children's ward talking to the kids. And that's when Tina mentions to Jerry that her and Mary have recently started... Mary started to turn around on her and not be so mean. And as we know, it's because Mary found out that Tina was making a birthday cake for her, from her and Wally. And so that's why Mary's opinions on Tina have been shifting. Or, she's being a lot nicer now. Tina then bids farewell to Jerry and says that Olaf is shipping her off to go and help the current addicted patients who are still in critical conditions. So she says goodbye to Jerry, and Jerry just says, "They're letting me out in a couple of days if you need to talk." And she says, "I know," and leaves. So Wally is dealing with these kids, and the kids are just we want to see you, they're asking him all these different questions because he's the Flash, obviously, and they're who would win in a race between Superman and the Flash? And between Superman and you? And Wally's just Superman, I guess, because he doesn't have any powers right now. And then they ask what about you and the old Flash? Who would win in a race? And Wally just straight up coldly is just the old Flash is dead. He just goes yeah, he's dead. Look, What if I was to tell you that I don't have super speed anymore? That it got burned out when Vandal Savage, and all the kids are just like, "Aw, that's bull. We'd know you were just a faker dressed up to look like Flash. I want to see you do something fast. Yeah, run around the room fast as you can." And as, like, Wally is stumped from this, Mason shows up. Mason Trowbridge, who is Wally's neighbor, and he really does Wally a solid. He does a little coin trick with the kids. He like takes out his coin and he's like, "Watch the Flash. He's gonna take this coin and he's gonna put it somewhere in the room. He's gonna hide it, and and then you're gonna see where he hides it." And so he throws the coin, and then he's like, "Oh, look what the Flash. Where did the Flash hide it? Oh, it's behind your ear." And he like pulls the coin out of this little girl's ear, and all the kids are like, "Oh, that's awesome." It's a very wholesome moment of Mason just kind of being who will be Wally's most, like, I can already tell that Mason is going to be like a very strong ally for Wally throughout the coming years. I don't know how long he'll stick around as a character, but right now he is Wally's greatest ally as the Flash. Neighbors stick together, that kind of thing. So he and Mason have a chat when they go back to the apartment buildings, and while in Mason's room, Wally finds an eviction notice for Mason, and Mason says Mr. Gilchrist is being a dick. Like, he wants everyone out of the building. Apparently, I'm guessing he wants to turn it into some kind of condo. Wally's like, "Man, that sucks. Jeez." Meanwhile, Jerry is still recuperating, and he is visited by Dr. Orloff and Dr. Bortz. And they explain how, they're talking about how, like, Wally West was in pretty bad condition when he was brought in, and that they helped him and they healed him and stuff. But his speed is gone. So they explain to Jerry that Wally has lost his speed, and they want Jerry to help them figure out how to get Wally's speed back. And Orloff is being a real dick, and obviously we know that Jerry hates Dr. Orloff, and that's one of the reasons that ended up making him take the drug, because he wanted to kill him. And Jerry's kind of like, "I don't remember trying to kill you, but I'm starting to remember why I wanted to." Because Dr. Orloff is like, "Remember, you tried to kill me? Like, do you remember that? Like, I don't like you, Jerry." And Jerry's like, "I don't remember anything." But he's like, "I'm starting to remember why I wanted to kill you, because you're a dick." And so, Wally gets on the phone with Mr. Gilchrist, where he's like, "Why did you evicted me?" And Mr. Gilchrist is like, "Yeah, you didn't pay your rent. Like, and boo-hoo. Like, you're getting out of that building as fast as possible. I have no time waiting around." And Wally's just like, "I have the money. Like, I was in hospital, for Christ's sake." And he's like, "It doesn't matter. You didn't have the money when I needed it. And so screw you." And so Mr. Gilchrist hangs up on Wally because he's a dick. And it turns out that he has a baby girl. He has a baby daughter. And he starts, like, nurturing his little girl. He's like, "Oh, who's daddy's best little girl? Like, who's his baby girl?" And it turns out Vandal Savage, Nick Basaglia, and the creep, like the Kugel, or it's not Kugel. Kugel's dead. One of the other, like, addicted dudes, Velocity 9 dudes, the one that wore the Flash costume that, like, beat the shit out of Wally, he's there too. And he kind of grabs the baby, and we're kind of left thinking that Mr. Gilchrist is, like, working with Vandal. So Wally, after getting off the phone with Mr. Gilchrist, bumps into a nurse who knows he's the Flash and wants to hear about all of his adventures. And so he starts talking to this nurse about all of his adventures. And he actually thinks to himself, he's like, "Man, this girl's great. Like, maybe I am maybe I should break up with Tina, because there's all these other girls who would love to be with the Flash, unlike Tina. Like, all these girls that would love to listen to my adventures and stuff like that. And meanwhile, Mary and Tina have a conversation over Wally, where Tina asks Mary about how, like, she's like, were you ever in love with, like, your previous, like, are you still in love with your husband? And Mary's like, he tried to kill me, so, like, no, I can't say I am. So they kind of bond over the fact that they're both in abusive relationships, or they've both been in very abusive relationships. And she kind of convinces Tina that maybe it's the right thing for her to break up with Wally if she really believes that there's just nothing in common between them. Like, because Tina says, she's like, we have nothing in common. Like, back when he saved my life and we were always in danger, it was like the spark of our relationship. But now that that's over, I've realized that Wally and I have nothing in common, while me and Jerry and I, we've been getting along so well ever since he gave up using those drugs. You know? He's been healing, we've been laughing together. Like, maybe I should be with Jerry. So, meanwhile, Jerry is given the all clear. He's all good. He's able to leave the hospital. So, hallelujahs for Jerry. He's really turning his life around. And, Jerry's just like, you know what, I never considered it, but I don't even know where I'm going to go. I have nothing, you know. Like, Tina let their apartment go, so, like, he doesn't have an apartment to go back to, you know. And even if there is an apartment to go back to, it's 3,000 miles away from here, and he's got no money, you know, thousands of dollars of damages against him, no wife and co-workers who'll remember him as an 8-foot-tall psychopath who tried to kill them, you know. And the doctor's just like, you're not dead. And that's when Jerry's just like, good point. So he's kind of like, he's at least glad that he's still alive, so he has a chance to create a new life. Wally and Tina reunite after Wally's done talking to that other nurse, and Tina just breaks up with him there and then. He's about to break up with her. He's thinking about different lines that he could come up with to try and break up with her. He ends up settling with, you're too good for me, because he's like, yeah, she'll eat that up. Wally is being a real dick about this. Like, I'm looking forward to hopefully him going through, like, some character development, because right now Wally is a very shitty dude, and the way he thinks about women is very, he thinks of himself as being, like, because he's a superhero, that any woman deserves him. And so I'm kind of hoping that, like, he'll develop. And I think this breakup with Tina is what's going to do that, because Tina breaks up with him before he gets a chance to break up with her, it leaves him recontemplating his decision to break up with her, because now he's like, oh shit, I think I need her in my life. And so, yeah, she breaks up with him and she leaves, while he's just like, ah, crap, I think I need her. And my life is ruined, but I know who's to blame. And, obviously he blames Jerry. So Wally puts on his costume, and Jerry is talking to Dr. Bortz when somebody comes out of nowhere and grabs Dr. Bortz and is, like, holding him by his neck. And it turns out to be Sergei, who, if you remember, was a member of Blue Trinity, who are the opposites of Red Trinity. They're, like, the bad Red Trinity that were created by Russia. Sergei comes in, but he's all decrepit, so the Velocity 9 has been, like, messing with his system and making him all, like, ugly and, like he's dying. You know, he comes in, he was told to come and kidnap Dr. Orloff, so that's what he's come to do. And Wally comes in, and so he beats the shit out of Wally, because Wally's trying to save Dr. Bortz. And Sergei's, like, coughing and shit, like, he's not in a good state. So after beating the shit out of Wally, Sergey goes over to the phone because it's stuck to a phone to like pick it up and call for aid to help him. And when he calls his subordinates for support, his operation has been cancelled. They've stopped it, and so Sergey doesn't have anything left. He was supposed to kidnap Dr. Orloff, but those orders were cancelled, and so now he has nothing, and so he just collapses from exhaustion because of the Velocity 9. He isn't dead. He ends up in a coma. And Jerry's just kind of like, oh shit. Like, well, that was crazy. Kind of feel bad for that dude. Wally heads back to his apartment where he finds another eviction notice. He's been officially evicted and it's on his door. Luckily, and he's there with his mom. Luckily, the door's still unlocked. So he goes in, he sees the phone ringing on the table. He's really pissed off at Mr. Gilchrist. He's like, damn it. Screw that guy. And he answers the phone, and Mr. Gilchrist is on the other end, and he's like, Wally, I need your help, please. Vandal Savage, he and Basaglia too, they wanted money, a lot of money. I laughed at them. They stole my daughter. Like, please, help them find my daughter. Like, Vandal wanted to, like, he wants to get out of the country, and because I refused to give him money, he kidnapped my daughter. So, like, could you please save her? They're gonna kill her. And Wally is just like, I'm sorry, Wally West doesn't live here anymore. He's been evicted. And Wally just hangs up on him. He's just like, say, Mum, anything to eat? I'm starved. And that's where it ends. That's where issue 16 ends. Pretty intense ending there. I kind of love it. Obviously Wally's a dick, but like, it makes sense for him to be like, screw you, you know? And it adds some complexity to Wally's character instead of him just doing the heroic thing of just being like, I'll go save your daughter, when it's like, no, I don't want to, because you've treated me like shit. Now you're asking me to save your daughter? No, thank you. So we go into issue 17, which continues right off from where the last issue ended. Jerry is overlooking Sergey, who is currently in a coma, and he says, like, you know, that they've given him enough, like, elephant trank. Like, they've given him enough trank to put a hippo to sleep. And he's like, I hope so. For your sake, I certainly hope so. Because he believes that, like, you know, Sergey's better off being in a coma than being alive in the condition that he's in. And so he exits the room and wanders through the hospital and realizes that the hospital's empty. He's like, that door, it's always been locked. It's where they keep the drugs. Uh-oh. And, like, he notices that the door's sort of, like, open, and he opens it up, and there's a guy inside who's holding a woman hostage, and he's like, give me the drugs! I heard about them having this, like, Velocity 9 here. Give me them. And Jerry, like, tries to calm down. He's like, look, friend, like, I'm not a threat. Like, let's not get crazy here. And the guy's just like, I ain't crazy. And, you know, the guy explains to Jerry that he's just like, I heard this thing. It gives you powers. It gives you strength. I want it. Give it to me. And Jerry explains, he's just like, they don't keep V9 here. You know, they have a warehouse. Like, they had it in a warehouse, but it got destroyed. So there's none left. There's no more Velocity 9. It's all gone. The guy's just like, you lie. They're all super. They can go fast. Man, nobody can touch him. You lie. You show me one. Jerry's just like, me? And that's when Jerry explains, he's just like, I had Velocity 9. And it ruined my life. I was able to, like, when I was on it, I was super strong. Everything you said, I was able to crush concrete in my hands. I could run at super speed. But it destroyed my body to the point where I needed to get all of my organs, my heart and everything, retransplanted. But And, like, they had me on anesthetic, and they had me under, or at least they thought they had me under. What they didn't realize was that I was paralyzed, but I could see and feel everything that was going on during the operation. Do you know how it feels having your heart be taken out of your body? And the guy's just like, oh, stop it, you're a freak. And this guy just dumps the nurse and runs away. And he's like, leave me alone, you freak. It's kind of a cool moment for Jerry where he gets a bit vulnerable, you know? And it's pretty intense when he talks about the fact that, like, during his operation, like, he was awake the whole time and he could feel it, you know? It's pretty intense. And so Mary and Wally, you know, Mary's just witnessed Wally hang up on Mr. Gilchrist, who's been asking for help with his daughter. She's like, Wally, you can't just hang up on him like that. That's his daughter. And Wally's just like, you don't understand. Like, he's been on my case for months. You know that. She's like, you gonna do this to him? Wally's just like, she's like, this is his daughter. And Wally's just like, yeah, I know. And if I save her for him, like, he's probably not gonna thank me or even treat me better. And she's just like, you never used to think about that. Wally's just like, well, maybe it's time I started. He spit on me, Mum. He threw us out of here without a thought, and he'll keep doing it. He sees me as a superpowered servant who's supposed to jump whenever he needs me. Not this time. If I don't make him... And she's like, squirm? He's like, pay. He'll always treat me like garbage. Always. And then he sits down, and his mum's just like, and if he doesn't? And Wally thinks for a sec, and he's like, then I'll try and find her anyway, I guess. It isn't her fault her old man's a geek. So Wally gets on the phone with Red Trinity, who are currently going under the alias of Capitalist Courier, which is their service. He goes to them for help to help find Mr. Gilchrist's daughter. But sadly, Red Trinity are like, we would love to help you. You are a dear friend of us, but, like, you don't have any money, and we really need the money for our services. Because this place, the rent here costs quite a bit. So we need to pay the rent, so we need the money. I'm really sorry, Wally. And Wally is just like, I'll see you on Friday then. She hasn't already been killed. And he storms out, and he's like, that was stupid. Why make them feel bad? I don't know what they could really do anyway. I gotta do something today. And so, as he's walking down the street, Mason just happens to be there. He's like, hey, Wally, you want a lift? Well, Wally's just like, hey, can you take me around all day, please? And Mason's like, yeah, of course. Like, we're friends. And Wally asks Mason to help him take him to where Vandal Savage was last seen. So, you know, Mason is just like, you got any leads? Wally's just like, I was up, like, half the night calling for info. Nothing even the Titans are scanning, but there's nothing to find. Vandal Savage has completely vanished. So Wally decides that he knows somebody that could possibly help them. So they head to the General Hospital where Jerry is being released because he is now all good. And he comes face to face with Wally. He's like, hey, Speed Demon, can we talk? Jerry's just like, I'm not Speed Demon anymore. And so Jerry and Wally have a little bit of a moment. Jerry gets into the car with Wally, and, you know, they talk a little bit about how, like, you know, like, Jerry thanks Wally for saving his life. And he's like, what do you mean? Jerry's just like, if I'd have gone on the way I was, I'd be dead now. You stopped me. You saved my life. Thank you. Wally lets Jerry know that Tina and he have split up. And Jerry is kind of like, I'm betting you think that she, like... I bet what you're thinking right now is, like, how could she, like, break up with me? Like, did she break up with me to end up with this guy? You feel like pounding on me and yelling at me and showing her how wrong she is? And you don't, because you know it won't make any difference. And you don't even know for sure if you love her. And Wally's just like, how do you know that? And Jerry's like, I was 20 once. So they're kind of, you know, realizing that they have a bit in common. So Jerry decides that the best way to get Vandal's attention is to use Wally as bait, because Vandal hates Wally, and so if Wally kind of makes it apparent that he's around, Vandal might show up. So Wally goes into a place called the Hard Times. It's like a club. He goes in to pretend to be a drug-addicted person. He finds this dude and asks him for Velocity 9. He's like, hey, you got any Velocity 9 on you? The guy's like, yeah, come on back. As long as you got the bread, I'll give you the drug. So they head out the back, and the guy pulls a knife on Wally, and he's like, give me the bread, man, quick, or I'll... And Wally turns on him and, like, punches him in the head. And, you know, Wally's just like, this isn't working. Like, we're not getting enough attention to draw Savage here. Like, beating this guy up isn't going to get Savage's attention. And so the guy kind of, like, wobbles away. And as he does that, the Velocity 9 freak who wears the Flash costume shows up. And he's like, Savage says to kill you now. And comes in and starts beating the shit out of Wally. And Wally's like, hey, no, wait. And Mason comes up and he's like, hey, cut it out, you freak. And then this freak just starts beating up both Mason and Wally at the same time. He's like, both at once. And just starts beating the shit out of them. And then he just gets hit in the back of the head by a crowbar. Jerry shows up and knocks him out. And this freak dies. And so, but they come to the conclusion that, like, Jerry didn't kill him. He just died, like, the dude died from, like, the Velocity 9. Like, he finally burnt out and he died. They find a note on him that tells Wally to come to a specific location, LH Transfer Co. So Wally puts on his Flash costume and they head over there, and they cross paths with Nick and Trudy, and Nick is like, I'm gonna make you pay, because, like, you've ruined my life. You know, Vandal has ruined my life, and Vandal's only on my tail because of you, Wally, so I'm gonna kill you right now. And he pulls out a gun. He goes to shoot Wally, and he shoots at him, but Wally catches the bullets. Because it turns out Wally's speed has finally come back. So he, like, looks in his hand, he's like, huh? Well, what do you know, boys and girls? Let's party. And he's, like, holding the bullets. It's kind of it's a pretty epic moment. He's like, let's party. And then he just, like, starts speeding in. He, like, beats the shit out of Nick, and Nick's just like, kill him quick. So this guy tries to shoot Wally, and he misses him because Wally's super speed now. Wally ties up the dude using super speed and pulls down this other guy's pants to knock him over. And so Nick is just like, alright, I'll kill Jerry and Mason then, if, you know, you won't be fast enough to save them. And he goes to shoot them, but Wally comes in and takes his gun. He's like, I guess this means I win, huh, Nick? And so they win. So Nick gets taken in Nick gets tied up and they call the police to take him in. Wally tells Trudy that he's just like, you know, the police are gonna want to arrest you too, as an accessory. And Trudy tries to talk her way out of it. She's like, you know, I can take you around back. We talked about getting a little bit more intimate. And Wally's like, I don't think so. He then admits to Mason that he actually did think about, you know, going along with Trudy and, like, letting her go. And Mason's just like, kid, if that's the worst thing you ever think in this life, you'll be damn lucky. And Jerry finds another note in Trudy's purse that's addressed to Wally. And it tells them to go to another location, a factory. So they decide not to call the police because they think that, like, if they call the police, it's going to just cause Vandal to split. So they decide to go to the factory by themselves. They head inside the factory and Jerry's just like, it's going to take us forever to check this whole place. Wally's just like, done. Like, because he used the super speed to check the whole building. Jerry's just like, show off. So they decide to head downstairs to the final area that hasn't been checked by Wally. They find a door and it's stuck, and but then they manage to get it open. And as they enter, they find Sergei tied to a chair with bombs strapped all around him, dynamite strapped all around him, a note that has Wally West on it, and like it's beeping, so obviously, you know, it's counting down and it's gonna blow up. They're like, my God, yep, mail's in, and that's where the issue ends. It's a pretty horrifying issue of Survey. He's got like dynamite strapped to his mouth and like all over his body. It's pretty screwed up. And I guess we'll find out if Wally can save Mr. Gilchrist's daughter and Sergei in issue 18. So, we move on to issue 18, which continues on from where issue 17 left off, where Wally, Mason, and Jerry came across Sergei, who was tied up by a bunch of dynamite, thanks to Vandal Savage. Wally finds a note that tells Vandal to go to a place that he loves most, and also adds a PS, and he's like, PS, by taking this letter, you've set off the bomb, so your choice is to either let this guy die or save his life. It's your choice, Wally. Mason and Jerry are all for just, like, leaving the guy and getting the heck out of there. And they even decide that, like, they can't even deactivate the bomb anyway, so they should just leave him to die. And Wally's like, no way. Like, I'm not gonna let this guy die. You know, I'm a superhero. I gotta do the right thing. So Jerry does conclude that, like, there is a little bit of, like, a kink in the relay that would allow Wally to take the bombs off and give him, like, less than a second to get rid of the dynamite before they explode, and hopefully saving this guy's life. So Wally decides to try to do that. He takes all the dynamite off of Sergei, zooms up the stairs, and right after they hear a massive explosion, and Wally comes back and he's like, "Hi guys, miss me?" And they're like, "What happened?" And Wally explains, he's just like, "It exploded right after I let go of it." And it also, like, I didn't get away from the, like, I think my speed protected me from most of the explosion, but I still burnt my arm. So they get Sergei out of the building, and Wally decides that he now needs to go to the location that Vandal told him to go to, because it's probably where Gilchrist's daughter is being held. Meanwhile, Wally's mum is going through all of Wally's bills. There's just so many overdue bills, and they gotta do something, otherwise they're gonna end up being homeless. So she decides to go out and find a way to make money. She's like, I have to do something. She remembers how Wally's friend Chester is rich now. So she decides to go to his home to maybe talk to him and get some money. And when she gets there, there's a lot of people there. And upon entering the building, she finds out that Chester Runk has been doing work for lots of people, and they've been paying him for it. But he's starting to get behind on his work because he's just a young guy. Like, he's, what, like 20, 21? Like, he isn't old enough to be, like, owning this entire business all by himself. So he's getting behind on his work, and people getting mad. There's one guy in particular who asked Chester, his name's Donovan Ryan, he asked Chester to come and eat a bunch of raw sewage that morning, but Chester forgot. And he's like, how about next Tuesday? And he's like, next Tuesday, you know, I'll sue you. And he tells his guys to, like, you know, he's like, I'm going to sue you, chunk. And then Wally's mum, Mary, is like, hey, leave him alone. Like, he's just a boy. And, like, how dare you come into his house and talk to him like this? And this guy is just like, take her away, let her cool her off. You know, like, take her outside. And two of his thugs grab her, and then they just disappear. And it's because Chester has sent them away to his dimension. And he's like, don't you ever touch my friends again. And Mary's just like, Chester. And Chester's just like, I know. And he makes the two people that had grabbed Mary come back from the other dimension. They have no clothes on anymore. Apparently they fell into like an acid pool or something. They were like, rivers of toxic waste, mountains of acid, insanity. Don't send us back. We'll be good artists. And they like run out screaming. And this guy's just like, I'll see you in court for assault and kidnapping. And Mary's just like, good. Since you were in the process of assaulting me, now get out of here. In fact, all of you can leave until tomorrow. Come back when you've learned some manners. And Chester's like, thank you for sticking up for me. And so Chester explains to Mary that he can't do this by himself. He's really struggling with keeping up with all of these orders that he's supposed to be doing. And Mary talks about how, she was a secretary in the past and that she is looking for a new job, so she decides to join Chester and become his secretary and help him. And I thought it was a real sweet moment. There's a little panel of Chester and he's got a little smile and it's pretty cute. I like it. It's very wholesome. So Mary and Chester are going to start working together so that Mary can start bringing in money. It didn't take William very long to make Mary a likable character. He came in and was instantly like, okay, Mike was making Mary awful. I'm gonna develop her character. And he's doing that. So Wally leaves Mason and Jerry to look after Sergey while he goes off to search for Mr. Gilchrist's daughter. Mason's just like, do you know where to go? And Wally's like, yeah, he said to go to the place I love most. Like, to the thing I love most. There's nothing more that I love most than, the only dead... I think it wasn't just to go to the thing he loves most. It's something that's dead that he loves the most. And Wally is like, the only person that's dead who I love is Barry Allen. So he's probably hidden his daughter in Barry Allen's grave. So he heads to the graveyard to find Barry Allen's grave. But he gets really hungry because Wally has that metabolism. And he's like, if I don't eat now, I'm probably going to die. So before he gets to the graveyard, he comes across Chunky Chicken. And they're actually closing. But he manages to convince the lady working there to let him in and have something to eat. She just gives him whatever's left over. She's like, there's some burnt chicken, you can have some of that. And Wally's just like, sounds delicious. And so he eats to get back his energy. And while he's eating, he talks to this waitress and explains to her what he's doing. Like, he's looking for a young girl who's been kidnapped and that she's probably somewhere in the graveyard. Wally also explains that the grave is like the grave of his friend, and this woman's just like, why? And he's like, but he's not in it. And she's like, why? And Wally's like, there wasn't enough left of him to bury. And so that's pretty dark. It's also like, Wally doesn't mention Barry's death very often, especially during Mike Barron's run. So it's nice to see William have him actually talk about it, because it makes sense that Wally would be talking about Barry, especially since, like, Barry didn't die that long ago. So it felt very out of character for Wally to just never talk. Or maybe it is in character of, like, you could explain it away as, like, Wally was just avoiding talking about it. But now he's starting to talk about it, Like, he bottled it up inside, and now it's all coming up, now that Barry is involved in his life beyond death. So Wally heads to the gravedigger's house in order to ask him for help to dig a grave. The guy's just like, come back tomorrow with a warrant. And Wally's like, we gotta go now. There's a girl, she's kidnapped, she's probably in the grave. And he's like, all right. Like, he like grabs him by the neck. He's like, there's a girl who's kidnapped. Like, we gotta do something. She's probably in one of those graves. And he's like, all right. And so he goes over to show Wally the shovel that he uses, and Wally's just like, I'll do it myself. And he takes a shovel and heads off to the graveyard to search every single grave to try and find Barry's. Eventually he finds it, and he digs it open. He finds a casket inside with a bomb attached to it, and he's like, it's probably booby-trapped. Like, if I touch it, like, it might explode. And then somebody grabs on his shoulder, and Wally's just like, ah! And, like, he goes to punch the person, and it's Mason. Mason's just like, sorry I startled you, kid. Looks like you found her. And the timer on the casket goes off, but instead of exploding, it just opens up. And Gilchrist's daughter is inside it. She's like, Dada. And so he grabs that, and the casket congratulates Wally for winning. And then, out of nowhere, a helicopter comes in and starts mowing down the graveyard, attempting to riddle Mason and Wally with bullets. So Wally's just like, before I deal with that, I gotta get this girl to safety. So he heads off. He finds ironically, he finds a what's the name? What would you call them? I don't know. It's I can't remember the name of it, but like it's one of the it's one of the ladies from like a church where they wear like the robes. I can't, for some reason I'm stumping on the name, but like he just happens to come across one of them, and he's like, "Hey sister, like here, have this little girl. Like, could you just look after her while I go and save some people's lives?" And so she gets left holding this baby. She's just like, And meanwhile, Mason's just like, Wally, this guy's trying to kill me. Please save me. And he's like being chased by this helicopter. Wally comes in, throws a ton of rocks at the helicopter, and Mason straight up is just shooting at the helicopter. He's just like, you know, here's one in your ear, you cheap hood, and here's one in your... And then the helicopter explodes, and Wally's just like, get down! And grabs Mason and pulls him to the ground as it explodes. And Wally's like, well, at least Vandal's dead, because they assumed that Vandal was inside the helicopter. And Mason's just like, nah, Vandal's the kind of guy who would just like fake his death and disappear. Like, you realize that, Wally? Like, he's probably not dead. And Wally's like, well, if that's the case, then I'm a massive idiot for thinking that he's dead. So Mr. Gilchrist shows up to pick up his daughter, and Wally's just like, oh, great, perfect ending to a perfect day. And, Gilchrist is rude at first, until Wally grabs his daughter. It's like, special delivery, Gilchrist. And Mr. Gilchrist just breaks down. He's got his daughter, and he offers Wally, like, he actually thanks Wally. You know, he does the opposite of what Wally thought he would do. He thanks Wally. He even offers to give Wally back the money that Wally gave him. Wally's just like, keep it, okay? Give it to somebody who needs it. And that's the end of the issue. Really good. I really enjoyed that whole arc. I thought it was great. And now William is free to move on. Now that he's tied up that whole plot line that Mike Baron kind of left hanging, he's free to go on to do what he wants to do. And what he wants to do is pretty great, because the next issue of The Flash issue 19, is probably I don't know if it's my favorite one so far, because I really love the Kilgore stuff, but this is a great issue. It features the Rogues. The grand return of the Rogues. We haven't even heard about them since Barry Allen died. The only time they've ever been mentioned was in another comic, which was Animal Man, where Sam Scudder had died in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and so a new guy called Evan McCulloch became the new Mirror Master in Animal Man. And there is a little bit about that in this issue. The Rogues do talk about that, because he's not here, because they don't like him, which I like that kind of dynamic where they don't like the new Mirror Master. But without spoiling anything, let's get straight into it. This one is actually drawn by Greg LaRocque. Wasn't here to do this one. This one's actually drawn by Jim Mooney. Still written by William Esner Loebs. So Wally and Chunk are watching TV together. At this point in time, Wally is dating a new woman. He's dating that model that was from Annual 1. What was her name? Gotta remember her name. Connie. Right, yeah, Connie. So he's dating Connie now, and Chunk, like, they're talking about, like, Barry. You know, Wally and Chunk talk about Barry, and for a little bit, and Wally talks about the fact that, like, because Wally talks about how, like, he and Chunk should go on a trip together, and Chunk's just like, I can't fly in planes, I'm too big, and I'm too afraid of being in them. And Wally's like, Barry was afraid of planes too. Like, he felt like his speed, like, he had deduced that, like, if he was ever to fly in a plane and it was to crash, his speed would protect him from the explosion, like, automatically. So he would be at super speed, stuck in, like, a flaming fireball, and the only way to get out of it would be to either slow himself down and die. Otherwise, he would be trapped in there, like, forever. And so it's pretty dark that Wally is talking about that. Chunk tells Wally that he's got a letter for him that came. Chunk is also a little bit apprehensive because Wally's been living with Chunk for a little bit. And Chunk kind of doesn't want him to live with him because Wally doesn't really respect him all that much. He's being a bit disrespectful. He's taking advantage of him. So he gives Wally this letter, and the letter is an invitation to a party honoring Captain Cold. It's a dinner party honoring Captain Cold. Wally's like, why would the Rogues Gallery invite me? Man, they must be, like, preparing to clown me or, treat me like shit because, they always saw me as, like, little piss baby Flash, like the little baby Flash and stuff. So they're probably gonna be, like, making fun of me or something, or be there to, like, try and kill me. And Wally decides to go anyway because it's a gathering of supervillains and he wants to go to make sure nothing bad happens. And he asks Connie to come with him. But before they go to the party, he and Connie decide to stick around Chunk's house for a bit, and Chunk ends up having to leave, or Chester ends up having to leave his own house to give them privacy. And he's too shy to say no. Like, he wanted to say no, because he's like, this is my house. But he ends up leaving anyway. And so he's stuck out in the cold. It's like snowing outside. And he's like, I don't even like to walk that much. And it's cold and miserable. And it's my house. And he talks to himself about how, like, Wally's been mistreating him. And that he needs to stand up to Wally and express his feelings. And it's kind of sad. So, Connie gets ready to go with Wally to the party for the Rogues Gallery, and they end up just chilling for the rest of the night until the party is on. Meanwhile, at the Red Freighter Inn, which is where the Rogues are having their party, I don't know how they got a party there. Like, they must just be, like, not being criminals anymore, because I feel like either that or they, like, held the inn hostage and they were like, give us a party right now, it's for Captain Cold, otherwise we'll kill you. But as far as I know, like, outside of Captain Boomerang, none of the Rogues Gallery have been doing anything. They haven't made any appearances anywhere outside of this issue. Captain Boomerang is obviously a member of the Suicide Squad. According to this, Captain Cold is also a member of the Suicide Squad. I don't know if he is in the actual series, but he was mentioned to have been a member. Something I noticed reading this is that, so there's a lot of classic characters in this that are all members of Barry's Rogues Gallery, but there are also some characters in this that weren't Barry's villains, or they weren't in his rogues gallery. Like, Gentleman Ghost is here for some reason, and I don't think he and Barry ever fought each other outside of maybe, like, the Justice League. Like, they never had one-on-one battles, ever. Like, I read all of that stuff, and I do not remember Gentleman Ghost. And I feel like I would remember Gentleman Ghost showing up, because it's Gentleman Ghost. You don't forget him, you know, because he's a fucking ghost. But he's there for some reason. Tio Moro is also at the party as well, which is another character where I'm like, why is he there? Like, William, do you remember who Barry's rogues were? Like, he's got, like, Captain Boomerang and, you know, Rainbow Raider and Golden Glider and all of the classics. But then you got, like, Gentleman Ghost, Tio Moro. Dr. Alchemy is here, even though I'm pretty sure his last appearance, he gave up being Dr. Alchemy. Because Dr. Alchemy is this character who has multiple personalities. And I'm pretty sure the last time he appeared, he managed to suppress the other personality and became a regular dude again. But I guess in between issues, at some point, he became Dr. Alchemy again. But enough about that. I could go on all day. We're here for some fun. The Rogues are having a good time. You know, they're all cheersing to Captain Cold, and they're all like, I'm glad everyone who could make it, and to everyone who couldn't, you know, who couldn't make it today for various reasons, let's give them a cheers. And they're all like, yeah, two absent friends. I love the relationship that the Rogues have with each other, where they're all pals, you know? Except most of them don't actually like the original Mirror Master, and they don't like the new one just as much. Golden Glider is like, absent friends? And Captain Cold explains that one of their absent friends is Dr. Light, another character who is not he's not a member of the Flash's Rogue Gallery. He fought him once, and that was because it was part of a grand plan to take on the Justice League. He's more of a Teen Titans villain, especially now. He's a Justice League and a Teen Titans villain. But he is one of the absent villains. He wrote a letter saying, like, sorry friends, I couldn't come, friends. I've been drafted into the Suicide Squad in place of Captain Cold. And they're all like, Arthur's always a card. And this is when they mentioned the Mirror Master, where Dr. Alchemy's just like, somebody else is missing too, Mirror Master. And they're all like, that scumbag. Sam Scott is dead, and whoever's wearing that costume is a coward and a pervert. And they're all just like shitting on Evan McCulloch. He's like, we should run this guy down for taking over, like, our friend's identity and, you know, being a piece of shit. Maybe if we take him to the cops, we'll get some kind of reward. And, Captain Boomerang starts egging, Rainbow Raider on. He's like, how you planning on doing that? Turning him red? Like, painting him red? And, Rainbow Raider's just like, you know I don't paint because it upsets me. Because he's colorblind. Rainbow Raider is a colorblind dude, and he became a villain because he's colorblind. That's literally his origin. He's colorblind, he loves painting, it upsets him that he can't paint because he's colorblind, so he became a villain to steal, like, paintings and things like that. And he has the ability to, like, change people's emotions with his vision. So he looks at people and, like, their emotions change. He hits them with, like, different color beams. But he's like, you know how I feel about painting. No, but I'll paint your picture, a portrait in fear. And he instills fear into Boomerang, and a massive fight breaks out. Or almost breaks out, because Captain Boomerang accidentally lets go of one of his boomerangs, and it goes straight for Gentleman Ghost. So Heatwave saves Ghost by zapping the boomerang and melting it. Wally shows up to the party with his girlfriend, Connie, and the Rogues are like, West! Like, what the hell is he doing here? How did he know we were here? Who invited him? because Wally's just like, I got a letter. Somebody invited me, and they're just like, who invited them? Like, who invited this scum? And the trickster's just like, I did. Like, it was just a joke. Like, I didn't actually think he was gonna show. Like, and Wally's just like, yeah, you even saved our seats. Isn't that great, Connie? And they kind of just let Wally join them. You know? And so, they're all getting ready to fight Wally, and, like the tension is building up, and Captain Cold breaks the tension by being like, this is my party, like, a brawl will just ruin the mood, so let's just go with it. So, there's a buffet at the party, and they all start, like, eating and drinking. Everyone's having a good time. Everyone's kind of talking to one another. Captain Boomerang is just being, like, a pig. He's, like, they're hitting on Connie, and Connie's just like, oh, you're as gross as I heard. Like, you're as gross as everyone says, Captain Boomerang. And Digger's just like, oh, me Digger. And so, Dr. Alchemy, like, it seems like all of the villains are just hitting on Connie. She's a model. So I guess maybe that's why. It's still wrong. Dr. Alchemy is kind of, like, hitting on her. And, Connie kind of connects with Golden Glider, because Golden Glider is the only other woman in the room. So she kind of saves Connie from Dr. Alchemy, and is just like, don't worry about him. He's got like multiple personalities. He's a bit of a freak, so like, let's get away from him. And Golden Glider kind of like introduces Connie to all the villains and kind of gives them a little synopsis of who they are. Because Connie's just like, who's that guy? And Golden Glider's just like, that's Tio Morrow. He's a lot different than he used to be. He's pretty depressed these days. He kind of drinks away his sorrows. I think he saw something in the future that really fucked him up, and so now he's just become this depressed old man. And, Connie then, like, realizes that the woman she's talking to is Golden Glider, and she's like, don't you have a feud with the Flash? And Golden Glider's like, not the Flash, I have a feud with Barry Allen. Like, he killed my husband, the Top. I swore revenge. You know, I've had to kill everything he loved. Like, I wanted to kill, like, his parents. I wanted to just ruin his life. And Connie's just like, so, do you hate Wally too? And Golden Glider just, like, quickly calms down. It's just like, why? Alan's dead. It's over. I hated the man, not the costume. You have to be crazy to do that. So she's, like, acting all crazy, and then she's like, oh, hate Wally? No, of course not. I'm not crazy. And, Wally and the Trickster have a fun little interaction where the Trickster's just like, hey, Flash, like, I bet no one's ever shot you at point blank like this, because he's got, like, a gun held up to Wally's chest. And he's like, I don't think do you reckon you'd be fast enough to dodge this? And, like, he tries to shoot Wally, and Wally, being super fast, just takes the gun off of him. And is just like, I don't know, we'll have to try it sometime. And, Trickster's just like, yeah. And he's kind of depressed. Wally gives him the gun back, and Trickster's just like, oh. And it's one of those fake guns with, like, a little flag that comes out. Connie wants to talk to Wally. She's like, can I have a talk with you? And Wally's like, yeah, sure. And Connie's just like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, why did you bring me here? This place is full of maniacs. There's a guy who became a criminal because he's colorblind. Why did you bring me here? I hate this place. And then all of a sudden, an earthquake starts, and, Chester comes falling through the ceiling. And Wally's just like, Chet, what are you doing here? And Chester's just like, we're supposed to be friends, Wally. I'm sick of being treated like this. You threw me out of my own house, ignored me, treated me like a trained monkey. Well, what do you have to say? And Wally's just like, I think you're standing on somebody. And he, like, Chunk just moves out of the way. And he was standing on Gentleman Ghost. And Captain Cold helps Ghost up to his feet. And then Chunk ends up being the one who apologizes. And Wally's just like, I didn't know you wanted to come, pal. I'm sure you're invited. And Captain Cold's just like, naturally. And so they kind of just let Chunk join in on the party. And Captain Cold's just like, if we didn't invite him, what could he do to us? And Wally's just like, you don't want to know. And Wally kind of just gets away without apologizing to Chunk. You'd think maybe he would do it later, but he never actually apologizes to Chester, which is kind of sad. Meanwhile, Connie is sitting with Golden Glider, and Dr. Alchemy comes over, and he's like, I wanted to apologize for being a dick earlier, so here, I'll use my Philosopher's Stone to turn your bracelet into 24 karat gold. And Connie's just like, thanks, but it was platinum and a gift from my daddy. And he's just like, oh, sorry, I'll change it back. And so he changes it back, and Connie's just like, well, it was platinum plated. Like, she's thinking to herself. It was platinum plated. But whatever. And Golden Glider is like, you got off easy. He used to change my underwear to gold. He thought it was, and then a boomerang comes in and cuts her off. And she's like, cute? I was like, what the heck? Like, what is this? This is insane. It's great, though. I love this kind of, like, weird... I love it when comic books have, like, these slice-of-life stuff with, like, the villains and them just having, like... just being people, you know? And just kind of giving in to how weird the rogues are. You know, the worst... I think the thing that you can do wrong with the rogues is make them too serious. Like, you can have serious moments with them, but I think the rogues are always at their best when there's, like, a balance between them, you know, being criminals and then just being regular guys, because that's what they are, you know? Captain Boomerang heads out because he can't hold his liquor. He's starting to get all wobbly, and he's throwing his boomerangs around because he's all he's a bit drunk, and so he ends up vomiting. He has to go to the bathroom to vomit, and Gentleman Ghost is just like, he never could hold his liquor. Then a fight breaks out in the party. Rainbow Raider accuses Weather Wizard of having a mic on him. And they're all like, get real, Roy. Like, why would he spy on us? Like, he's got no reason to do that. And Rainbow Raider actually takes a mic off of Weather Wizard, so it turns out it was true. Weather Wizard was a spy. He's got a mic on him, so they all turn on him. They're like, you think... And so Wally gets into his Flash costume because he's like, I gotta stop this before it gets out of hand. And Wizard's just like, you wimps think you can take me? Eat ozone! And like creates a giant cloud to rain on everyone. And he's like, so long, pals. The National Snoop offered me a mint for a story on super criminals. You just set me up for life. And Captain Cold's just like, aren't you gonna go get him? Like, aren't you gonna stop him? And Wally's like, for what? Making a rain cloud? Like, he didn't do anything wrong. Like, I can't really arrest him for just recording you. Like, for recording us. You know? And so, after that, the sudden cloudburst actually prompts Chunk to... Because he's been figuring out for a while now, how to get the people that are stuck inside of him, out of the other dimension, to you know, bring them back to the real world so that they're all free. And the idea of the cloud bursting out of nowhere that was created by Weather Wizard was enough to give him the idea of, like, give him the ability to just, like, do it. So he lets everyone out of his body. Like, all of the people that were stuck inside him just pop out of thin air, and they all come out, and they're all free. And because he's let out, like, 20 plus ruffians, they all start, like, taking over the party, eating all the food and stuff, and things just get hectic, everything falls apart, and we cut to the whole inn has been trashed. We don't get to see it. It happens off page, but it was trashed by all the people that were stuck inside Chunk. And Captain Cole's just like, thanks for sticking up for us with the cops. And Wally's just like, no problem. Like, without you folks in the Rogues Gallery, the damage would have been much worse. And Captain Cole goes on like a little bit of a tirade where he's like, you know what, we're pretty powerful. And like, we could have been like Caesar, we could have been lords, we could have been leaders, we could have been tyrants with the amount of power that we have, the power of the elements. But instead we ended up just getting like stealing jewelry and robbing banks. And you know, I blame Barry Allen. I think Barry Allen like tricked us. Like, we fell into his trap. You know, he made it a game of greed and revenge, kept us distracted, playing against him, instead of doing what we were really capable of. You know, we could have been Caesars, instead we're just clowns. And Wally's just like, well, maybe, but there's one thing I know for sure. And Captain Cole's just like, what's that? And Wally is like, you guys sure know how to throw a great party. And we end on that. It ends on like Chunk and Wally and Connie and the Rogues just sitting out the front of the inn, chilling, waiting for the cops to come. And it's pretty good. I really enjoyed it. It was a really good issue. Probably my favorite single issue so far. I don't know if I liked it more than Kilgore. I feel like it was neck and neck with that arc, with the Kilgore arc. I liked them both equally. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. Just getting to see the Rogues just holding a party and getting along, and like also like kind of getting along with Wally, because Wally wasn't one they hated, you know? And just getting to see the Rogues after all this time, finally somebody said something. It was really good. Really enjoy it. If you were to read one issue of like Volume 2 of The Flash, I feel like that would be one that I would show someone to try and get them into the series. So, we are now on the final issue of today that we're going to be covering on today's episode, which is issue 20. This issue directly leads into the next event, which is Invasion. So let's check out how that happens. So, in the previous issue, I forgot to mention, but Mason talks about this like vigilante called the Clipper. And that he used to work with the Clipper. He was like a superhero / vigilante from years ago. So he's recounting the tale of the Clipper. The Clipper was basically just this ruthless dude who would just like kill criminals. And Mason was his assistant who would like hold all his guns and stuff. And the reason why he was called the Clipper was if he didn't shoot a crook, he'd clip off their ear so he could find them again. And the Clippers, like, justice was like, all crooks deserve to die, so we kill them when we find them, kind of thing. So it was, yeah, pretty messed up kind of dude. So, Wally notices that his mom isn't there anymore, and he asks Mason where she's gone. And Mason tells him that she's gone to talk to, she went to, like, give a present to, this woman named Miss Lizzie, who was, like, the witch that found Wally when he was injured. Remember that? So, we go to Mary, she's been cooking stuff, and she's taking it to the neighbors to give to them, and a homeless man comes up from behind her, which freaks her out and causes her to drop her casserole. And Wally comes in, he's like, Mom, are you alright? And she's like, oh no, like, I'm okay, like, this guy just made me drop my casserole. And this homeless man starts eating the casserole, and it's smashed all over the floor, and they're like, careful, there's glass in there. And he's like, it's okay, I'll pick it out like chicken bones. So, Mary is quite rude to this guy and is like, just get him out of here. And Wally's like, you can stay here for now. Like, we'll give you a blanket and stuff, and you can just chill here. But he plans on calling the cops to let him know that the homeless guy is here, because obviously they got to turn him over. Because from what they know, he probably came from a mental hospital, or at least that's what they assume. So they have to call the police so that they can come and pick him up. So Wally does that. He calls the police, and then when the police come, the cop reveals to Wally that he's not there to pick up the homeless guy. He's actually there to give them an eviction notice because everyone in the building has been evicted entirely, which is shocking to Wally because, like, he just helped Mr. Gilchrist save his daughter, and now he's being evicted? Like, why? Like, why is Mr. Gilchrist doing this? You know? It makes him look like a real big dick. You know? So, Wally tries to call Mr. Gilchrist, but nobody answers, and so he tries to call Chunk to see if he has a place to stay, and Chunk doesn't answer either, because he's busy. So everyone in the apartment building moves off to, like, different places to live. Most of them have, like, relatives that they can stay with for a while with their kids. Mary and Wally are the only ones who don't actually have another place to stay. And Wally's like, well, let's grab our luggage before somebody has a chance to steal it. And then he turns around and the luggage is gone because someone has stolen it. And so Mary's just like, we're never going to find it. And Wally's like, oh, yes, we will. So he searches the entire city looking for his luggage, and he can't find it anywhere. And so he gets really mad. He's just like, it's gone. There's nothing I can do. Nothing. And Mary's just, like, trying to calm him down, being like, it's okay, Wally. And he's like, no, it's not alright. I can't make any money. We have to live in a dump, and now I can't even stop thieves from looting us. It's worthless. And so they decide to go and get dinner on one of their cards, because they've at least got some credit cards that should hopefully work. So, and then find a hotel room for them to stay in. While they're talking, there's somebody watching from a distance in, like, a raincoat, or, like, not a raincoat, but in, like, a coat and hat. They're cloaked in shadows, that is recording them. Seems to be, like, surveying them from a distance. I don't know what that's about. So, they head to a hotel they head to a restaurant to, like, try and get some food, and the cards decline. And Wally's like, that can't be true, like, these are good cards. So, they leave the restaurant, and Wally tries to get some cash out from the bank, and the cards aren't working. And he's like, that's impossible. These cards were working earlier, like, this can't be happening. Like, everything's screwed up. Like, what did you do, Mom? She's like, I didn't do anything. Well, you must have done something. And, so Wally is just like, I don't know why Gilchrist would throw us out of the building. Like, it doesn't make sense. And, that's when Mary decides to bring up the fact that she was like, there was these two guys that came by from the JDL. They were wearing, like, costumes, and they came to ask you if you wanted to join them. You'd have a place to stay. And he's like, the JDL? The Jewish Defense League? In costume? And she's like, well, yes. One of them was in, like, some sort of blue scales. The other one had green and yellow with goggles. You know, naturally I explained that you weren't at all interested in politics, and their organization was... And that's when Wally's just like, oh my god. Mr. Miracle and the Blue Beetle? It has to be. Not the JDL, Mum. The JLI. The JLI. The Justice League International wanted me to join. Me, and you turned them down? And she's like, there's no need to shout. Like, all this time we've been scraping by living in a hotel. I could have been living in Paris with an unlimited charge account. Admired, respected, and you turned them down? And she's like, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know. She's like, I feel so stupid. And Wally's, you know, comforting her. She's like, Mum, I didn't mean to. Look, there's only one way to straighten all this out. So he heads to Gilchrist's house to talk to him. And when he gets there, Gilchrist is, like, happy to see him. He's like, hey, Wally, it's great to see you. And he explains to Gilchrist what happens. And Gilchrist is like, well, I had nothing to do with that, so I'm gonna get this sorted out, but I won't be able to get it sorted out until tomorrow. But I've got $10, so this should hopefully help you for now. It's better than nothing. And Wally's just like, gee, thanks. Could have at least offered us a place to stay for the night. So Wally starts to get real hungry. He takes his costume off and puts his regular clothes on. He starts to get real hungry, and when he gets back to where his mum is supposed to be, she's missing. And he can't find her. He's like, I was only gone 10 minutes. And he looks around for her. He's like, Mom! 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 And he can't find her anywhere. She's gone. And, I can't even protect my mother. I'm worthless. Worthless. And she's like, okay, And so he's like, I'll search the entire city on foot. And then as he, like, runs to go do that, he trips over and realizes that he's running out of speed because he's getting too hungry. And he's, like, hurt his knee. He's, like, gashed his knee. He's like, damn it, can't depend on anything. So he's, like, really hungry. Upon falling over, he realizes that when he fell, he also dropped his $10 that Mr. Gilchrist gave him. He doesn't have any money now. So he decides, like, oh, maybe it's, like, under this car. So he goes searching for the money under a car, and this couple come along, and they think that, like, they see Wally, and they think that he's just a homeless guy. And so they're just like, don't look at him. Keep walking. So Wally starts to be treated differently by everyone around him. They all start to see him as, like, a filthy homeless person and stuff. Like, it's really awful, you know? He's just trying to get, like, he goes to, like, this restaurant where he tries to get food, and they tell him to scram. And he knows that, like, if he doesn't eat anything soon, like, he's gonna die. You know? There's even children that are, like, pointing at him and, like, being real awful to him, which is really bad. He goes to, like, a hot dog stand where he asks for, like, some food. He's like, please, like, I know this sounds crazy, but I really need the food. Like, I'm gonna die if I don't eat it. And the guy's like, oh, you bums are always getting in my face about wanting food. Nice pretzel, huh? Let's see how hungry you really are. And he drops it on the ground in, like, a puddle. And Wally, like, gets on his knees and pulls it out of the puddle and, like, eats it. He's like, that was good, but, like, it wasn't enough. Like, I need food. So he stumbles through, like, a park where he sees other homeless people. And he starts to notice that these people are, like, much nicer than the people that have been treating him really badly, like everyone else. He meets this guy named Old Red, like Old Red Pete. And Pete is really nice to Wally. And he allows Wally to kind of, like, chill with him. He even gives Wally his blanket to sleep for the night. And he gives Wally some chocolate so that he has something to eat. So it's a very wholesome moment with this man. So he tells Wally to sleep so that he'll be ready for the event in the morning. And he wakes Wally up in the morning and it's like, it's time, Wally, it's time. And he's like, time for what? It's like, it's food time. And the homeless people are all gathered around waiting for food. Because apparently there's a guy that comes around and gives everyone food every morning. Originally, like, a lot of them don't like Wally, and they're like, he's not our friend, we're not sharing our food with him. And then somebody comes over and stands up for Wally, and it's the homeless guy from the hotel that ate the casserole, and Wally let stay. He's like, Wally's my friend, so he can have some of the food. So Wally just realizes that it's the same guy that he called the cops on. Then Wally meets the guy who is coming to feed everyone. And this was a great twist, but the guy who has come to feed all the homeless people, and he does it as a regular thing, is the Pied Piper, Hartley Rathaway. Hartley Rathaway is a classic Barry Allen villain. He's always been depicted as, like, a very troubled person who has always been seen as, like, mentally ill. Last time we saw him, he actually got locked up in asylum because he'd gone insane. I guess he got better, and then as soon as he got out, he started helping people instead. Wally assumes that he does kind of like a Robin Hood thing. He's like, oh, so you steal from the rich and give to the poor? And Hartley's just like, no, I just go to the restaurants. They have all sorts of scraps that they don't need anymore, and they're just waiting for somebody to ask. You know, so he brings the scraps to these people and he gives them food. It's very wholesome. I really like this. I love this issue with how wholesome it is and how we get to see one of the few Flash villains who become good. The first one was Mick Rory, Heatwave, and now we got Hartley Rathaway. So Hartley senses that there's danger nearby. Like, he's about to give everyone food, and then he's just like, wait a minute. Somebody's nearby. Somebody's watching us. And he and Wally see the mysterious guy in the coat from before. And it's like, it's that man over there. Like, he's watching us. He like, I sense danger from him. Hold on, like, I'm gonna sort this out, Wally. And so Hartley goes to draw out his piper to play, like his pipe to play some music. And Wally's like, I guess I'll put on the Flash uniform, because even without my super speed, criminals usually think twice when they see the Flash. But before he can put a suit on, they both got hit by an intense amount of energy, which knocks them both out. The man in the coat is like, fools, I was only sent to observe. Now you have made me tip my hand. And the homeless people are all like, hey, you shot them. You look funny. You CIA or what? Look out, he's probably electrified. And the mysterious coated man scares them all away. All the homeless people get, like, sent away. They all, like, run away from this guy because he's, like, really freaky. We don't actually get to really see what he looks like. But he's come to scan Wally's body and, like, observe observe him for unknown reasons. So eventually he goes away and everyone is kind of gone when Wally wakes up. Piper's gone. And he's all on his own. He wakes up and he's like, my head. I remember there was this alien who wanted to study me. Where is everybody? And he's like, hey buddy, I need some help. There might be a kidnapping. And this guy's like, no time for that. And you heard? Earth's being invaded. There's UFOs up there. And that's where we end. That's where we end on the issue. And we lead straight into, from then on, it's going to be right into Invasion, which will be the next issue that we cover on the next episode of the Marvel and DC Retrospective Podcast. So that's going to be it for this episode. Issues 10 through 20 were really good. I really enjoyed. I enjoyed all the arcs that we covered. You know, the Velocity 9 stuff with Vandal Savage. I enjoyed that quite a bit. It was weird, but in a good way. Very shocking. There's a lot of violence and stuff, but it wasn't too much. It wasn't overbearing. You know, the stuff with Wally struggling in his life with his mum and like them having money problems and all that kind of stuff was really interesting as well. Very engaging, I would say. Did a very good job pulling that kind of thing off. It's not easy to pull off, you know, having a character go through troubles in life and make it feel realistic or relatable to anyone. And I feel like they did a good job where, like, people who have had those struggles, I'm lucky enough to have not had to go through anything like that. But people who have, I feel, would read this and would probably relate to it and have had similar experiences, you know? So, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do enjoy it, feel free to follow the podcast, because if you follow it, you will get updated whenever new episodes come out. And yeah, I'll see you next time for where we begin the Invasion event, where I'll be covering all the tie-ins for Invasion. So that's going to be over the next, like, 3 weeks, I would say, because there's 3 parts to Invasion. I was thinking of doing 1 part each week, because DC did a good job of separating it into separate, like, titles, like separate parts. So, Next week, we're going to be covering Invasion First Strike. So I'll see you then. Have a good one.